When my daughter-in-law told me I was a toxic influence and banned me from seeing my grandchildren, I smiled, nodded, and walked to my car. By the time I got home, I'd made 3 calls. By the end of the month, the house I'd given them had a for sale sign in the yard, and they had 30 days to get out. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I used to think I knew what love looked like. It looked like Tuesday afternoons in my kitchen, flour dusting every surface while Emma and Jack pressed cookie cutters into dough with their small, sticky hands. It looked like their shrieks of laughter when I'd pretend to steal their cookies, chasing them around the kitchen island in the house that used to be mine. The house I'd given away because I thought family meant everything. "Grandma, you're doing it wrong," Emma would say, her 7-year-old face serious as she repositioned my cookie cutter. "The star has to be perfect, or Santa won't eat it." Jack, only 5, would nod with his sister's borrowed wisdom. "Perfect for Santa, Grandma. Perfect." That word followed me everywhere in those days, attached to everything my daughter-in-law Vanessa demanded from the world around her. The house had to be perfect when she and my son Ryan moved in 3 years ago. Not just clean, perfect. I'd spent 2 weeks scrubbing baseboards, washing windows, trimming hedges, making sure every inch of the 4-bedroom craftsman met her standards. The same house my husband Tom and I had bought in 1987 for $89,000. The house where we'd raised Ryan. The house Tom had died in 2 years before I gave it away. It's a bit dated," Vanessa had said on her first walkthrough, running her finger along the kitchen counter I'd installed myself in 2003. "But I suppose we can work with it. For now. Like my taste, my work, my 30 years of memories were temporary inconveniences she'd eventually erase. I'd moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town, the kind of place with thin walls and neighbors who microwaved fish at midnight. Tom's life insurance money sat in my bank account, untouched except for the apartment deposit because I'd given away the biggest asset we'd ever owned to my son's new family. "Mom, you don't have to do this," Ryan had said when I'd first offered the house. But his eyes had lit up the way they used to on Christmas morning. And I'd known, even then, some part of me had known, that he wanted me to insist. So I did. "I want you to have it," I'd said, signing the quitclaim deed that transferred ownership of my home to my son. "I want Emma and Jack to grow up somewhere with a yard, with a neighborhood, with roots. Your father and I built those roots. Now they're yours." Vanessa had smiled her perfect smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "That's so generous, Eleanor. We'll take excellent care of it." They hadn't. Within 6 months, my kitchen was torn apart for a renovation I wasn't consulted about. The counters I'd installed were ripped out and replaced with white quartz that showed every fingerprint. The cabinets Tom had built by hand were painted over in trendy navy blue. The backsplash where Emma had helped me place each tile, gone, replaced with geometric patterns that Vanessa called elevated, and I called heartless. It's their house now, Mom," Ryan had said when I'd mentioned the cabinets. "Vanessa has a vision for the space. A vision that erased every trace of the people who'd actually built that space, who'd lived in it, loved in it, died in it. But I'd bitten my tongue, because I got to see Emma and Jack 3 times a week. Tuesday afternoons for cookie baking, Thursday evenings when Vanessa had her Pilates class and needed a babysitter, Sunday dinners where I'd cook the pot roast Ryan used to love, watching him eat it with the same enthusiasm while Vanessa pushed food around her plate and talked about her new cleanse. The arrangement worked because I made it work. I followed Vanessa's rules to the letter. No sugar before dinner, no TV on school nights. No rough housing that might result in grass stains or scraped knees. No stories about the old days that might make the children think life was better before their mother's renovations. No, 1,000 small deaths of spontaneity and joy, all in the name of keeping peace with a woman who'd taken my house and was slowly taking my grandchildren's childhoods. "Grandma, why do we always have to whisper when Mom's home?" Jack had asked one Thursday evening, while we built a Lego tower in what used to be Ryan's childhood bedroom. "Because your mother thinks joy should be scheduled and controlled," I'd thought. "Because she's turning you into little adults before you've had a chance to be children." "We're not whispering, sweetheart," I'd said instead. "We're using our inside voices." Emma had looked up from her coloring book, her dark eyes, Tom's eyes, seeing more than a 7-year-old should see. "You're sad when you're here, aren't you, Grandma?" The observation had knocked the air from my lungs. "I'm happy when I'm with you," I'd answered, which was true and not true at the same time. I was happy with them, but the house haunted me. Every corner held ghosts of the life I'd surrendered. The living room where Tom and I used to dance to old records. The hallway where we'd marked Ryan's height every birthday. The back porch where Tom had proposed, where I'd said yes to a life I'd thought would last forever. All of it buried under Vanessa's vision, restoration hardware furniture, abstract art that meant nothing, throw pillows that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, decorative objects you couldn't touch, rooms that looked like magazine spreads instead of places where people actually lived. "Eleanor, could you come early on Tuesday?" Vanessa had called one Monday evening in late October. "I need you to watch the kids for a few extra hours. I have a meeting with an interior designer, another renovation, another erasure of everything that had made that house a home." "Of course," I'd said, because that's what I always said. Tuesday had arrived cold and gray, autumn asserting itself over Spokane, with the kind of weather that made you grateful for warm kitchens and hot chocolate. I'd shown up at 2 p.m. instead of my usual 4, letting myself in with the key I still kept on the same keychain Tom had given me in 1985. The house smelled like Vanessa's expensive candles, French vanilla, and self-satisfaction. "Grandma!" Emma and Jack had materialized in the hallway, launching themselves at me with the kind of uncomplicated love that made every sacrifice feel worth it. "Hello, my darlings," I'd said, breathing in the scent of their shampoo, the warmth of their small bodies. "We're making Halloween decorations," Jack had announced, dragging me toward the kitchen. "Oh, come see." The kitchen table was covered in construction paper, glue sticks, and markers. A beautiful mess that would have given Vanessa hives if she'd seen it. "Very impressive," I'd said, examining a lopsided ghost that Jack had created with more enthusiasm than skill. Vanessa had appeared in the kitchen doorway, perfectly styled in athleisure wear that cost more than my car payment. "Eleanor, thank you for coming early. I should be back by 6. There's a schedule on the refrigerator. Snacks at 3:30. No screen time before 5. And please make sure they finish their reading assignments before dinner." A schedule for childhood. "We'll be fine," I'd assured her. She'd hesitated, her gaze sweeping over the craft supplies like they were evidence of moral failure. "And please clean up this mess before I get home. I can't have the designer seeing the house like this." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with Emma and Jack and the brief, precious hours where I could let them be children instead of accessories to their mother's aesthetic. We'd made Halloween decorations. We'd eaten apple slices with peanut butter. Real peanut butter, not the organic almond butter Vanessa insisted on. We'd built a blanket fort in the living room and told ghost stories that made Jack squeal with delighted terror. We'd done all the things Vanessa's schedule didn't allow for. And we'd been happy. At 5:47 p.m., my phone had rung. Vanessa's name on the screen with a photo I'd never been allowed to change. Her professional headshot, all sharp angles and sharper ambition. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you about something." Her voice had carried that particular tone I'd learned to dread, the one that meant I'd violated some invisible rule I hadn't known existed. "Is everything okay?" I'd asked, watching Emma and Jack put away the craft supplies without being asked. Good children trained to anticipate their mother's displeasure. "I'll be home in 10 minutes. We'll discuss it then." The line had gone dead. Emma had looked up at me with those knowing eyes. "Are we in trouble, Grandma?" "Of course not, sweetheart." But I'd known, the way you know when weather's about to turn, that something had shifted. Something had changed. The fragile peace I'd maintained for 3 years was about to shatter, and I had no idea why. Vanessa had walked through the door at 5:58 p.m., her heels clicking against the hardwood floors Tom had refinished the summer before he died. Ryan followed behind her, his face pale, his eyes unable to meet mine. "Kids, go upstairs and start your homework," Vanessa had said, her voice pleasant, controlled, the kind of control that made my spine straighten with warning. Emma and Jack had obeyed without question, because children always know when adults are about to destroy something. The 3 of us had stood in the kitchen, my kitchen that wasn't my kitchen anymore, surrounded by the silence of impending disaster. "Mom," Ryan had started, then stopped, looking to his wife for permission to continue. Vanessa had smiled her perfect smile. "Eleanor, we need to discuss some concerns Ryan and I have about your relationship with our children." Concerns. The word had landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of dread through my chest. What concerns? I'd kept my voice steady, refusing to show fear to this woman who'd taken my house and was now reaching for something more precious. "We think you're undermining our parenting," Vanessa had said, pulling out her phone and scrolling through photos. "Emma told me you let them eat peanut butter today, despite knowing Jack has a sensitivity." "Jack doesn't have a sensitivity," I'd said carefully. "He ate peanut butter sandwiches for 2 years before you decided he couldn't." "That's exactly what I'm talking about." Vanessa's voice had sharpened. "You question our decisions. You ignore our rules. You encourage the children to be—" She'd waved her hand vaguely. "Wild. Wild. Like joy was a character flaw. Like childhood was something to be managed out of existence." "I encourage them to be children," I'd said quietly. "You encourage them to disrespect their mother," Vanessa had corrected. "Emma told me you said the old house was better before we renovated it. Do you have any idea how that made me feel?" I'd looked at Ryan, waiting for him to defend me, to remember the house he'd grown up in, the father who'd built those cabinets she'd painted over. He'd looked at the floor. I said the cabinets were beautiful, I'd corrected carefully. "Because they were. Your father made them." "And that's another thing," Vanessa had continued, her voice rising slightly. "You're always talking about the past, about Tom, about how things used to be. It's depressing, Eleanor. The children don't need that negativity in their lives." Negativity. My memories of my husband were negativity. "Vanessa," Ryan had started, but his wife had cut him off with a look. "Ryan and I have discussed this extensively," she'd said, and I'd heard the truth in those words. She had discussed and he had agreed, the way he always agreed with everything she said. "We think it's best if you take a step back from the children for a while." The kitchen had tilted slightly, the room where I'd raised my son, suddenly foreign, hostile. "What does that mean?" I'd asked, though I'd already known. "It means we need space," Vanessa had said, her voice softening into false sympathy. "It means you're a toxic influence, Eleanor. Your constant sadness, your nostalgia for a house that isn't yours anymore, your subtle criticism of our choices. It's not healthy for Emma and Jack." Toxic. The word had hit me like a physical blow. "Mom, maybe it's just temporary," Ryan had offered weakly. "Just until what?" I'd interrupted, looking at my son, this man I'd raised to be kind, watching him let his wife eviscerate his mother's heart. "Until I forget your father, until I pretend this house wasn't mine, until I apologize for loving my grandchildren." "Don't be dramatic," Vanessa had said, checking her phone like this conversation was already boring her. "We're not cutting you off completely. We just think monthly visits would be better, more manageable, monthly. instead of 3 times a week, instead of Tuesday cookies and Thursday babysitting and Sunday dinners. Monthly, like I was some distant relative, instead of the woman who'd given them the house they were standing in. I'd looked around the kitchen one last time, at the windows Tom had installed, at the corner where Ryan had taken his first steps, at the table where we'd celebrated birthdays and grieved losses and built a life that Vanessa had systematically erased. "I see," I'd said quietly, my hands steady, my voice calm, my heart breaking into pieces so small I'd wondered if they could ever be put back together. "I'm glad you understand," Vanessa had said, already moving toward the hallway, already done with this conversation. "We'll call you next month to set up a visit." I'd walked to the door, past the family photos where my face had gradually disappeared from the frames, past the coat closet that no longer held any of my things. At the threshold, I'd turned back. Ryan had been standing in the kitchen doorway, guilt written across his face, but not loud enough to make him speak. "Ryan," I'd said softly, "when your father was dying, do you know what his last words to me were?" My son had shaken his head, tears in his eyes, but not falling, never falling, because Vanessa didn't like emotional displays. He said, "Take care of our boy, not take care of our house, not give him everything." He said, "Take care of our boy." I'd let the words hang in the air between us. "I thought I was doing that by giving you this house, but your father was smarter than me. He knew houses don't make families. People do. Love does. Respect does." Vanessa had appeared behind Ryan, her hand on his shoulder like a puppeteer with strings. "Goodbye, Eleanor," she'd said, her voice final, absolute. I'd walked to my car in the fading October light, the air cold against my face, my hands shaking as I fumbled with my keys. Behind me, I'd heard the door close. Soft, decisive, sealing me out of the house I'd given away and the grandchildren I'd loved without condition. I'd sat in my car for a long moment, engine off, watching the warm light in the windows of the house that used to be mine. Then I'd turned the key, and I'd driven away. But not home. I'd driven to the office of the county recorder, because here's the thing Vanessa had forgotten in her rush to erase me from her perfect life. I'd signed a quitclaim deed transferring ownership to Ryan. To Ryan. Not to Ryan and Vanessa. And in Washington State, that meant something very specific about what I could do next. The paperwork was about to get very interesting. The Spokane County Recorder's Office closed at 5 p.m. on weekdays, but their online portal stayed open 24 hours a day. I'd learned that during the 2 weeks after Tom died, when I'd spent sleepless nights researching probate law and property transfers, trying to understand the legal maze of grief. Now sitting in my apartment at 9:47 p.m., I was grateful for that insomnia-driven education. I pulled up the property records for 2847 Maple Street. My address for 38 years, Ryan and Vanessa's address for 3. The screen glowed in the darkness of my living room, casting blue light across the stack of documents I'd retrieved from my filing cabinet. The quitclaim deed I'd signed in 2021, the original deed from 1987, showing Thomas and Eleanor Whitmore as joint owners. The death certificate from 2019 that had made me sole owner. The new deed from 2021 that had made Ryan sole owner. Ryan, not Ryan and Vanessa. I'd been careful about that. Even in my grief-stricken generosity, some instinct I hadn't understood at the time had made me insist the house go only to my son, not to his wife. Tom's life insurance lawyer had advised it, actually. "Mrs. Whitmore," he'd said gently, "in cases of family property transfer, it's often wise to keep assets in the bloodline, just in case." "Just in case of what?" I'd asked. "Just in case," he'd repeated, and I'd understood the things he couldn't say directly. Divorce, death, daughters-in-law who saw dollar signs instead of sentiment. The house was worth approximately $487,000 now, according to the most recent county assessment. We'd paid $89,000 in 1987. Tom and I had spent 32 years and roughly $150,000 in improvements, turning it into something worth nearly $500,000. I'd given it away for free. But, and this was the crucial detail I'd discovered during 3 hours of research, I'd given it to Ryan as his separate property, not as community property with Vanessa. In Washington state, separate property remained separate unless specifically commingled with community assets. And while Ryan and Vanessa had spent money renovating the house, the property itself, the land, the structure, those were Ryan's separate property. Technically, legally, entirely his, which meant Vanessa had no legal claim to it in the event of, say, a sale. I opened a new browser tab and searched for real estate attorneys in Spokane. The first 3 results were large firms with corporate websites and smiling partners in expensive suits. The 4th result was a small office downtown. Margaret Chen, real estate and family law. Her website was simple, direct. Protecting family assets for over 20 years. Free consultations. Evening appointments available. I clicked the contact form and began typing. Margaret Chen's office was located above a coffee shop on West Riverside, the kind of place that smelled like espresso and old law books. I arrived at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, exactly 48 hours after Vanessa had banned me from my grandchildren's lives. Mrs. Whitmore? A woman in her 50s appeared in the doorway, her gray suit professional but not pretentious, her handshake firm. "Please come in." Her office was small but organized, walls lined with legal texts and family photos. 2 teenage boys with her eyes, a husband with kind face. Real people, real family. Not the performative perfection Vanessa posted on Instagram. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Your email was intriguing," Margaret said with a slight smile. "Property transfer reversal cases are always complicated. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Tom's death, about giving Ryan the house, about 3 years of watching Vanessa erase every trace of the life Tom and I had built, about Tuesday cookies and Thursday babysitting and the gradual realization that I was being used for childcare and then discarded when I'd outlived my usefulness. I told her about toxic influence and monthly visits, and the way my son had stood silent while his wife eviscerated his mother. Margaret listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp with professional assessment. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need to be very direct with you. What you're describing is legally possible, but emotionally nuclear. If you pursue this, you will destroy your relationship with your son, possibly permanently." "What relationship?" The words came out more bitter than I'd intended. "The one where I babysit on demand and get banned from family dinners. The one where I gave away my house and got erasure in return." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "I have to ask these questions. Are you doing this out of hurt or out of genuine legal concern about your property?" I'd thought about that question for 2 days straight. "Both," I said honestly. "I'm hurt, I'm angry, but I'm also watching my son's wife control every aspect of his life, and I think—" I paused, trying to articulate the fear that had been growing for 3 years. "I think if they divorce, she'll take everything, the house my husband built, the equity we created. She'll walk away with $500,000 of the Whitmore family legacy because I was too grief-stricken and generous to protect it. Has Ryan indicated they're having marital problems?" "Ryan doesn't indicate anything anymore," I said quietly. "He agrees with whatever Vanessa says. But I've watched her spending patterns, the constant renovations, the designer furniture. The lifestyle that's just slightly beyond what a high school teacher and a part-time social media consultant should be able to afford." Margaret pulled up something on her computer. "You said Ryan is the sole owner on the deed." "Yes, And Vanessa has made no financial contributions to the property that would establish a community interest. I thought about the renovations, the furniture, the endless parade of purchases. She spent money on improvements, but it all came from their joint account, which means half of it was Ryan's money anyway, right? Correct. Margaret made another note. And you said you've been helping them financially. Not directly to the house, but I've paid for things. Groceries when money was tight. The kids' school supplies and activities. I've probably spent $15,000 over 3 years on expenses that freed up their money for renovations. Margaret looked up sharply. Do you have records of those payments? I have bank statements, credit card receipts. I paused, almost embarrassed. I'm very organized about finances. Tom was an accountant. It rubbed off. For the first time, Margaret smiled fully. Mrs. Whitmore, being organized is about to become your greatest asset. Here's what I need you to do. I spent the next week living in spreadsheets and bank statements, reconstructing 3 years of financial generosity I'd never thought to track as debt. $247.50 at Target for school supplies, August 2021. $180 for Emma's ballet classes, September 2021. $340 for groceries after Ryan mentioned they were tight this month, October 2021. $450 for Jack's birthday party, because Vanessa wanted to rent a bouncy house and hire a photographer to document her perfect motherhood for Instagram. Month after month, year after year. Groceries and utilities and children's activities and emergency car repairs and veterinary bills for their dog and Christmas presents and birthday presents and just because presents when Vanessa mentioned wanting something she couldn't quite afford. The numbers accumulated, like evidence at a crime scene. Year 1, $4,680. Year 2, $5,240. Year 3, $6,150. Total, $16,070. Not enough to be life-changing money, but enough to reveal a pattern. Enough to show that while Vanessa was spending thousands on restoration hardware, furniture, and designer throw pillows, I was subsidizing their actual life expenses. I created a second spreadsheet for the house itself. Purchase price, $1987, $89,000. Down payment, Tom and Eleanor, $18,000. Mortgage payments over 30 years, $127,440. Renovations and improvements, $152,000. New roof in 1995, $8,500. Kitchen remodel in 2003, $23,000. Bathroom updates in 2008, $15,000. New furnace in 2012, $6,800. Hardwood floor refinishing in 2016, $4,200. The list went on and on, each improvement documented with receipts I'd kept in labeled folders, because Tom had insisted on tracking every penny we put into our home. Current assessed value, $487,000. Equity created by Tom and Eleanor Whitmore, $398,000. I stared at that number until it blurred. Almost $400,000 of value that Tom and I had built through decades of work and careful maintenance and love poured into every corner of that house, given away to a son who couldn't stand up to his wife, now being used as leverage to keep me away from my grandchildren. My phone rang, interrupting my mathematical rage. Unknown number. Hello. Mrs. Whitmore? This is Lisa Brennan. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services. The floor tilted beneath me. I'm sorry, what? We received a call expressing concerns about your interactions with Emma and Jack Whitmore. Her voice was professional, neutral, giving away nothing. I need to schedule a time to speak with you about these allegations. My hands went cold. What allegations? I can't discuss the details over the phone, but the complaint suggests inappropriate supervision and potential emotional manipulation of the children. Can you come to our office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Vanessa. This was Vanessa. Yes, I heard myself say. I'll be there. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment's dim light, my carefully organized spreadsheets glowing on the laptop screen, and felt something shift inside my chest. I'd been playing defense, grieving, trying to maintain some small connection to my grandchildren by following Vanessa's ever-changing rules. But Vanessa wasn't interested in coexistence. She was interested in elimination. She'd taken my house. She'd taken my son. She'd taken my grandchildren. And now she was trying to take my reputation, my character, painting me as a danger to children I'd loved since the moment they were born. I pulled up Margaret Chen's number and typed a text message. She just called CPS on me. I want to move forward with everything we discussed. How quickly can we act? The response came within 2 minutes. I'll draft the paperwork tonight. But Eleanor, once we file, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain? I looked around my small apartment. At the furniture I'd bought at discount stores because I'd given away my house. At the walls I'd never bothered to decorate because this place had never felt like home. At the photo of Tom on my bookshelf, his smile frozen in time, his eyes asking me what the hell I was waiting for. I'm certain, I typed back. The CPS meeting was exactly as humiliating as Vanessa had intended it to be. Lisa Brennan was a tired-looking woman in her 40s with the eyes of someone who'd seen genuinely terrible things, which made her skepticism of the complaints against me almost comforting. Mrs. Whitmore, I want to be clear that we take all reports seriously, but she glanced at her notes. The allegations here are fairly vague. Emotional manipulation, undermining parental authority, exposing children to negativity. Can you help me understand what these might be referring to? I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The house transfer, the 3 years of involvement, the sudden banishment, the cookies and blanket forts and stories about their grandfather that Vanessa considered depressing. Lisa's expression shifted from professional neutrality to something that looked like recognition, maybe even sympathy. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to be frank with you. We receive calls like this more often than you'd think. Grandparents who've been cut off using CPS as, she paused delicately, as a weapon in family disputes. Did your daughter-in-law inform you she was making this report? No, but she told me I was a toxic influence 2 days before you called. Lisa made a note. I'll need to visit the home and speak with the children, which is standard protocol. But between us, nothing you've described suggests actual neglect or abuse. It sounds like a grandmother who loves her grandchildren and a daughter-in-law who doesn't like sharing control. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. So you don't think? I think you're experiencing grandparent alienation, which is heartbreaking but not illegal. Lisa closed her folder. I'll complete my investigation, but I don't anticipate any findings. I'm sorry you're going through this. As I left the CPS office, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. Paperwork ready. Come by tonight to sign. We file tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Less than 24 hours before Vanessa's perfect world started crumbling, I typed back. I'll be there at 6 p.m. Margaret spread the documents across her desk like a battle plan, which I supposed they were. 3 legal actions, she said, tapping each stack of papers. First, a partition action to force the sale of the property. Because Ryan is the sole owner and the house is his separate property, you have standing to petition the court as the original grantor to reverse the transfer based on failure of consideration. Failure of consideration? I repeated. You transferred the house with the implied understanding that you'd maintain a relationship with your grandchildren and your son. That was the consideration, the reason for the gift. Vanessa has explicitly prevented that relationship, which means the consideration has failed. We're not guaranteed to win, but we have a strong case. She moved to the second stack. Second, a claim for unjust enrichment. You've spent over $16,000 subsidizing their household expenses while they've spent money on luxury renovations. We're arguing that they've been unjustly enriched by your support, while simultaneously excluding you from the family benefits that support was meant to maintain. The third stack was thinnest. Third, and this is the nuclear option, a formal complaint to the court about the CPS report. Filing a false report is a crime in Washington state. We can't prove it was false yet, but we can create a record of the allegation in case there's a pattern of harassment. I looked at the 3 stacks of legal documents, at Margaret's calm face, at the point of no return, staring me in the face. What happens when we file? Ryan and Vanessa will be served within 48 hours. They'll have 20 days to respond. The court will likely order mediation first, but if that fails, we'll go to trial. Best case scenario, the court orders the house sold, and you receive a significant portion of the proceeds as restitution. Worst case, they buy you out for a smaller amount. And Ryan. Margaret's expression softened. Ryan will hate you for a while. Maybe a long while. But Eleanor, from what you've told me, Ryan's already gone. The man who let his wife call CPS on his mother isn't someone who's going to suddenly wake up and defend you. She was right. I'd known it for months, maybe years, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real. What about Emma and Jack? That's the hardest part, Margaret admitted. You'll probably lose access to them during the legal proceedings. Vanessa will paint you as vindictive and dangerous. But, and this is important, when they're older, they'll understand. They'll see the documentation. They'll know you fought for what was right, even when it cost you everything. I thought about Emma's dark eyes, so like Tom's, seeing too much for a 7-year-old. About Jack's laugh when we built blanket forts. About Tuesday afternoons that would never happen again whether I signed these papers or not. Vanessa had already taken them from me. At least this way, I'd be taking something back. I picked up Margaret's pen. Where do I sign? The process server knocked on their door at 4:47 p.m. on Friday afternoon, just as Vanessa was setting up her ring light for an Instagram story about elevated weekend entertaining. I knew this because Emma told me later, much later, when the dust had settled and the truth had a chance to breathe. But in that moment, standing in my apartment with my phone clutched in my hand, I knew nothing except the waiting, the terrible, exhilarating waiting. Margaret had warned me. They'll call, don't answer. Let them leave voicemails, send texts, whatever they want. We need documentation of their reactions, but you don't need to subject yourself to the abuse. So, when my phone rang at 5:03 p.m. with Ryan's name flashing on the screen, I set it face down on my kitchen counter and turned up the volume on my television. The voicemail notification appeared. Then another, then a text message, then 3 more in rapid succession. I waited until 7 p.m. before I looked. Ryan, 5:03 p.m. Mom, what the hell is this? Call me immediately. Ryan, 5:15 RVO p.m. I just read the paperwork. You're trying to take our house. Your house that you gave us. Ryan, 5:22. Vanessa is hysterical. The kids are scared. What are you thinking? Ryan, 5:45 p.m. Fine. Don't answer, but you need to know you're destroying this family. Vanessa, 6:12 p.m. This is the most vindictive, pathetic thing I've ever seen. You're a bitter old woman who can't handle the fact that we don't need you anymore. Vanessa, 6:34 p.m. Ryan's lawyer says you don't have a case. You gave us that house. You can't just take it back because your feelings are hurt. Ryan, 6:58 p.m. Mom, please, can we just talk about this? There has to be another way. I read them twice, my hands surprisingly steady, my heart surprisingly quiet. The words that would have devastated me a week ago now felt like confirmation that I'd made exactly the right choice. They were scared. Good, They should be. I typed a single message to Margaret. They've been served. Multiple voicemails and texts. Forwarding them to you, now. Her response came immediately. Perfect. Don't respond to them. Let them spiral. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright, November asserting itself over Spokane with the kind of clarity that made everything look sharp-edged and unforgiving. I was drinking my second cup of coffee when someone started pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking, pounding. Through the peephole, I could see Ryan's face, red and twisted, with an emotion I'd never seen directed at me before. Pure fury. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open this door right now." I stepped back, my heart hammering. Margaret had been explicit. Do not engage with them in person. Any confrontation should be documented by third parties or recorded legally. Your safety comes first. "Mom!" Ryan's voice cracked. "Please, we need to talk about this." Behind him, I could see Vanessa in their car, her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling her parents or her lawyer or whoever she thought could fix this mess she'd created. "I have nothing to say to you, Ryan." I called through the door, loud enough for him to hear but controlled, calm. "Everything I need to communicate will go through my attorney." "Your attorney?" He laughed, a bitter sound I'd never heard from my son. "You got a lawyer to sue your own son. What would Dad think about this?" The invocation of Tom's name hit exactly as Ryan had intended, a blade sliding between my ribs, seeking my heart. "Your father," I said, my voice dropping to something cold and final, "would be ashamed of the man you've become. A man who lets his wife call CPS on his own mother. A man who stands silent while the woman he married erases every trace of his father's memory from the house his father built." Silence on the other side of the door. "Mom," Ryan's voice cracked. "Dorn, that CPS thing, I didn't know Vanessa was going to." "You didn't know because you don't ask questions," I interrupted. "You don't stand up. You don't protect the people who've sacrificed everything for you. You just agree with whatever Vanessa says and hope the problem goes away." "That's not fair." "Fair?" The word came out sharp enough to cut. "You want to talk about fair? I gave you a house worth $500,000. I spent 3 years babysitting your children while you lived a lifestyle you couldn't afford. I watched your wife erase your father's memory and said nothing because I wanted to keep the peace. And the moment I couldn't follow her rules, she banned me from seeing my grandchildren and called the government to investigate me as a child abuser." I could hear Ryan's breathing through the door, ragged and desperate. "So no, Ryan, I'm not interested in talking about what's fair. Go home, read the legal documents, get your own lawyer, and do not come to my home again." "Mom, please, go home, Ryan." Footsteps retreating, a car door slamming, the engine starting and fading into the distance. I slid down to sit with my back against the door, my coffee forgotten on the counter, my hands shaking with adrenaline and grief, and something that felt dangerously close to triumph. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is David Chen, Margaret's husband. She asked me to check in. Are you okay? She saw Ryan's car in your parking lot via the building's security camera feed." I blinked. Margaret had been monitoring my building's security cameras. "I'm fine," I typed back. "He's gone now." "Good. Margaret says to tell you, you did perfectly. Don't engage, let them flail." The flailing, as it turned out, was spectacular. By Monday morning, Vanessa had posted a 3-part Instagram story about toxic family members and protecting your peace, and the hardest decisions we make as mothers. No names, of course, just enough context for anyone who knew them to understand exactly who she was talking about. The comments were predictably supportive. "You're so brave for setting boundaries. Toxic people don't deserve access to your children." "May, sometimes the family we're born into isn't the family we deserve." I screenshot every post, every comment, and sent them to Margaret with a simple message. Is this relevant? Her response: very. She's establishing a public narrative that contradicts her actual behavior. Keep documenting everything. By Tuesday, Cody and Catherine Jenkins had gotten involved. Vanessa's father called me at 6:47 a.m., apparently operating under the assumption that elderly people were always awake at dawn and available for abuse. Eleanor, this is Cody Jenkins. I think we need to have a serious conversation about your recent actions. I'd learned my lesson from Ryan's visit. Mr. Jenkins, I have nothing to say to you. Any communication should go through my attorney, Margaret Chen. Now, Eleanor, there's no need for lawyers to get involved in what should be a family matter. You and your wife told your daughter I was too low class to attend Christmas dinner, interrupted quietly. You supported her decision to ban me from seeing my grandchildren. You called CPS to investigate me as a child abuser, and now you want to talk about family. A pause. I don't know what Vanessa told you, but Vanessa told me exactly who you are.
People who think breeding and education matter more than character. People who spend other people's money while looking down on where that money came from.
People who raised a daughter who views relationships as transactions and children as accessories to her aesthetic. How dare you? Goodbye, Mr. Jenkins. Have your lawyer contact mine. I hung up and immediately blocked his number, my hands shaking but my conscience clear. Margaret called 10 minutes later. I just got a very angry call from a Bradley Morrison, who claims to be representing Ryan and Vanessa. He's threatening to file a countersuit for harassment and emotional distress. Can they do that? They can file anything they want. Whether it has merit is another question. I could hear the smile in her voice. Eleanor, they're panicking. Morrison is a divorce attorney, not a real estate litigator. They grabbed whoever they could afford on short notice. This is good for us. Doesn't feel good, I admitted. It will, Margaret said. Once we get to mediation and they realize how much documentation we have.
Once they understand that you kept every receipt, every text message, every piece of evidence showing the pattern of exploitation. They thought you were a soft target.
They're about to learn otherwise. The mediation was scheduled for 3 weeks later, the first available date that worked for all parties. 3 weeks of silence from Ryan and Vanessa. 3 weeks of watching Vanessa's Instagram pivot from boundary-setting warrior to family healing journey as she tried to control the narrative. I spent those weeks gathering more evidence with a thoroughness that would have made Tom proud.
I pulled up every text message exchange from the past 3 years, highlighting the requests for money, for babysitting, for help that was always framed as urgent and essential.
I printed out Vanessa's Instagram posts, showing off purchases that coincided with my loans to cover their utilities. I created a timeline of her renovations to my house, each one documented with before and after photos she'd proudly posted online, each one erasing another piece of Tom's work. I compiled photos of Emma and Jack at different ages, evidence of my presence in their lives. Birthday parties I'd helped plan and fund, Halloween costumes I'd sewn, Christmas mornings where I'd been welcome, back when they still needed my money in childcare. And I wrote a statement, longhand first and then typed, documenting every conversation I could remember about the house transfer, how Ryan had asked for help with their down payment, how I'd offered the whole house instead, thinking it would give them security, give my grandchildren stability, give me a reason to stay connected to the family Tom and I had built, how Vanessa had smiled and said, "That's so generous, Eleanor. We'll take excellent care of it." Margaret read my statement in her office the night before mediation, her expression carefully neutral until she reached the end. "Eleanor," she said, finally, "this is devastating. In the best possible way. You've documented everything. The implied contract, the consideration, the breach of that consideration. More importantly, you've shown the emotional manipulation and exploitation that led to the transfer. Is it enough? It's more than enough. But I need to prepare you for tomorrow. Vanessa will cry. Ryan will look betrayed. Their lawyer will paint you as a vindictive grandmother who can't accept that children grow up and make their own choices. They'll say you're using the legal system to punish them for setting healthy boundaries. And what do we say? Margaret smiled, the expression of a lawyer who knew she held the winning hand. We show them the math. The mediation took place in a conference room downtown, neutral territory with gray walls and a long table that felt like a courtroom without the judge. I arrived 15 minutes early with Margaret, both of us dressed in professional business attire that made us look like we meant business. Because we did. Ryan and Vanessa arrived exactly on time with Bradley Morrison, a man in his early 40s with expensive suit and the kind of fake confident smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Vanessa wore black, mourning clothes, I realized, as if she were attending a funeral for our relationship. Ryan looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes hollow, his face pale. Good. The mediator was a woman named Susan Oakes, 60s, steel gray hair, and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd spent decades listening to families destroy each other over money and principle. "Let's begin," Susan said, settling into her chair at the head of the table. "I've reviewed the initial filings from both parties. Mrs. Whitmore, you're seeking to reverse a property transfer made to your son 3 years ago, based on failure of consideration and unjust enrichment. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, you're arguing that the transfer was a completed gift with no conditions attached. Is that correct?" "That's correct," Morrison said smoothly. Mrs. Whitmore gave the property to her son freely and without reservation. Now, 3 years later, she's suffering from what appears to be age-related instability and buyer's remorse. "I'm 67 years old, not senile," I interrupted calmly. "And I have complete documentation of the circumstances surrounding the transfer and the subsequent breach of the implied agreement." Margaret placed the first folder on the table. "We'd like to start by establishing the timeline of events." What followed was 2 hours of the most methodical destruction I'd ever witnessed. Margaret walked through every piece of evidence chronologically. The initial request for help with a down payment. My counteroffer to transfer the entire house. The quitclaim deed showing Ryan as sole owner. The pattern of my financial support over the following 3 years. The text messages asking for help with bills. The Instagram posts showing luxury purchases made during the same months I was covering their utilities. Then came the photos. My kitchen before and after Vanessa's renovation. Tom's handmade cabinets painted over. The backsplash Emma and I had tiled together, ripped out and replaced. "These renovations," Margaret said quietly, "represent the systematic erasure of Mrs. Whitmore's deceased husband's work and memory from the home they built together. This wasn't just redecorating. This was elimination." Vanessa's face flushed. "We had every right to update our house." "Your house that you didn't pay for," Margaret interrupted smoothly. "Your house that was given to Ryan. Not to you, Mrs. Whitmore," with the implicit understanding that Eleanor would maintain a relationship with her son and grandchildren. She placed the next folder on the table. "Here's where it gets interesting. Mrs. Whitmore spent $16,070 over 3 years subsidizing your lifestyle, while you spent approximately $43,000 on renovations and luxury purchases. You had money for a $2,000 KitchenAid mixer, but needed Eleanor to cover your electric bill." Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Lifestyle choices aren't relevant to—" "They're extremely relevant to unjust enrichment," Margaret countered. "My client was funding your essential expenses while you spent your income on luxuries, all while living in a house she'd given you rent-free." That's the definition of unjust enrichment. Susan, the mediator, was making notes, her expression neutral but her pen moving rapidly. Margaret continued. "Now, let's talk about the consideration. The reason Eleanor transferred this property. Ryan, when your mother offered you the house, what did she say?" Ryan's voice came out hoarse. "She said she wanted us to have stability. She wanted Emma and Jack to grow up in the house where I grew up. And did she ever say she wanted to maintain a relationship with you and her grandchildren? Of course. That was understood. Understood, Margaret repeated.
An implied term of the gift. And Mrs. Whitmore did maintain that relationship, didn't she? 3 times a week for 3 years. Tuesday baking, Thursday babysitting, Sunday dinners, until October 29th of this year, when Mrs.
Vanessa Whitmore told Eleanor she was a toxic influence and banned her from seeing Emma and Jack. She pulled out her phone and pulled up a screenshot. This is the text message Mrs. Vanessa Whitmore sent to Eleanor on October 30th. We think monthly visits would be better, more manageable. Monthly visits instead of 3 times weekly. A 90% reduction in access to her grandchildren. Vanessa's jaw tightened. We had valid concerns about her influence. Concerns you articulated by calling Child Protective Services, Margaret said, placing another document on the table. Here's the CPS report filed November 1st. Allegations of emotional manipulation and inappropriate supervision. Allegations that were investigated and found to be without merit. Morrison leaned forward. My clients have every right to determine who has access to their children. Absolutely, Margaret agreed.
But they don't have the right to accept hundreds of thousands of dollars in property and financial support, with the understanding that Eleanor would remain part of the family, then exile her the moment she couldn't follow every arbitrary rule.
That's called fraud in the inducement. The room went silent except for the scratch of Susan's pen. Margaret placed the final folder on the table, this one thicker than all the others combined. This is a complete accounting of the value Eleanor and her late husband Thomas created in the property at 2847 Maple Street. Purchase price in 1987. $89,000. Improvements over 32 years, $152,000. Current assessed value, $487,000. Equity created by the Whitmores, $398,000. She looked directly at Ryan. Your mother gave you nearly $400,000 of equity that she and your father spent decades building. She gave it to you because she loved you and wanted to help you. And you thanked her by letting your wife erase your father's memory from that house and then exile her from your family. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. Vanessa's face had gone white. So here's what we're proposing, Margaret said calmly. The house goes on the market immediately. When it sells, Ryan and Vanessa keep 30% of the proceeds. Eleanor receives 70% as restitution for the equity she created and the financial support she provided. Additionally, they repay the $16,070 she spent subsidizing their lifestyle. Morrison's fake confidence crumbled. That's insane. You're asking them to give up $340,000. I'm asking them to give back what was never really theirs, Margaret corrected. The alternative is we go to trial, where Eleanor will testify about every detail of this exploitation, where we'll subpoena bank records and Instagram posts and text messages, where we'll present evidence of financial elder abuse and fraud in the inducement. And then Ryan and Vanessa will get nothing, because the court will award Eleanor the entire property. Susan set down her pen. I think we should take a break. Mr. Morrison, perhaps you'd like to consult with your clients privately. They returned 40 minutes later. Vanessa's eyes were red and swollen. Ryan looked like he'd aged 10 years. Morrison's confident smile was gone entirely. My clients, Morrison said carefully, would like to propose a counteroffer. Margaret's expression didn't change. We're listening. They're willing to sell the house and split the proceeds 50-50. In exchange, Mrs.
Whitmore withdraws all legal claims and agrees to a structured visitation schedule with the grandchildren, monthly, supervised visits for the first 6 months, increasing to bi-weekly if things go well. The audacity was breathtaking.
They were trying to use my grandchildren as bargaining chips to keep money they'd essentially stolen. Margaret didn't even look at me for approval. Absolutely not. Our offer stands. 70-30 split, plus restitution of $16,070. As for visitation, that's not on the table in this mediation. Mrs. Whitmore will pursue grandparent visitation rights through a separate legal proceeding if necessary. But, Vanessa started. But nothing, Margaret said, her voice steel wrapped in silk. You made a choice when you called CPS on Eleanor. You made a choice when you took her money while erasing her husband's memory. You made a choice when you banned her from seeing the grandchildren she'd helped raise. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. She stood up and I followed her lead. You have 48 hours to accept our terms. After that, we proceed to trial, and I promise you, the public record of that trial will be far more damaging than a quiet settlement. Susan, the mediator, cleared her throat. I strongly encourage both parties to consider settlement. These cases can get very ugly very quickly. It's already ugly, I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the mediation began. The difference is now everyone gets to see exactly how ugly. I looked at Ryan, my son, this man I'd raised to be kind and strong, who'd let himself be turned into a puppet. I gave you that house because I loved you, I said softly. I watched you let Vanessa erase your father's memory because I loved you. I followed her rules and bit my tongue and paid for your lifestyle because I loved you. And you repaid that love by calling me toxic and trying to erase me the same way you erased your father. Ryan's tears were falling now, silently, hopelessly. So no, Ryan, you don't get to negotiate. You don't get to use Emma and Jack as leverage. You lost that right when you chose Vanessa's pride over your mother's dignity. Margaret touched my elbow gently. We're done here. We walked out of that conference room with our heads high, leaving behind 3 people who'd just realized exactly how much their cruelty was going to cost them. The 48-hour deadline expired at 5 p.m. on Friday, November 17th. By 5:47 p.m., I'd received no call from Morrison, no acceptance of our terms, nothing but silence from the son who used to call me every Sunday just to talk. Margaret's text arrived at 6:02 p.m. No response from their counsel. We proceed to trial. I'm filing the amended complaint Monday morning with all supporting documentation. This becomes public record. Are you ready? I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built from the ruins of my generosity, at Tom's photo on the bookshelf, his smile knowing, his eyes proud, at the stack of evidence that would soon be available for anyone to read. Every text message, every bank statement, every receipt that proved exactly who my son and his wife had become. I'm ready, I typed back. What I wasn't ready for was how quickly Vanessa would panic. The Instagram post appeared at 9:34 p.m. on Friday night, after what I imagined had been hours of wine and fury and desperate strategizing. It was a photo of Vanessa and Ryan with Emma and Jack, all of them wearing matching Christmas pajamas. Everyone smiling except Ryan, whose eyes looked dead behind his forced grin. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulative storytelling. My heart is breaking tonight. We're facing an unimaginable situation where Ryan's mother is trying to take our home, the home she gave us because she disagrees with our parenting choices. She's upset that we've set boundaries to protect our children's well-being, and now she's using the legal system to punish us for putting our kids first. I never wanted to air family issues publicly, but I need your support, right now. We're looking at losing the only home Emma and Jack have ever known. We're facing legal bills we can't afford, all because one person can't accept that parents have the right to make decisions about their own children's welfare. If you've ever dealt with a toxic family member, you understand. If you've ever had to make the painful choice to protect your peace, you get it. Please keep our family in your thoughts as we navigate this nightmare. Uja family, first, we're protecting. My peace, we're toxic. Family, their home is where the heart is. Setting boundaries. The post had 247 likes and 89 comments within an hour. I screenshot it and sent it to Margaret with shaking hands. Her response was immediate. Perfect. She just committed defamation in writing with 89 witnesses. Don't respond, don't engage. Let her dig this hole deeper. But the comments, God, the comments were like watching a mob form in real time. You're so brave for sharing this. Some people are just bitter and can't let go. Wait, she gave you the house and now wants it back. That's literally insane. Can she even do that legally? This is elder abuse in reverse. Your MIL sounds unhinged. Stay strong, Mama. Mama, I went through something similar with my husband's mother. These women think they own their adult children. You're doing the right thing by protecting your babies. But then, buried in the supportive comments, I found something unexpected. Vanessa, I love you, but this doesn't add up. If the house was a gift, why would a court even hear this case? There must be more to the story. The commenter was Jennifer Marsh, one of Vanessa's book club friends. I recognized her from the photos Vanessa used to post of their literary evenings that seemed to involve more wine than literature. Vanessa's response came quickly. It's complicated, Jen. My MIL is claiming we manipulated her into giving us the house, which is absolutely false. She offered it freely and now regrets it. That's not our fault, Jennifer responded. But you said she's upset about boundaries with the kids. What does that have to do with the house? Vanessa didn't answer that one. By Saturday morning, the post had 412 likes and 156 comments, and the narrative was starting to fracture. More people were asking questions. What boundaries? Why would a court take this seriously if it was really just a gift? How much is the house worth? And then, at 11:23 a.m., someone posted a comment that changed everything. Just FYI, court records are public in Washington state. I looked up the case, Eleanor Whitmore versus Ryan Whitmore, case CV 2024-8847. The complaint includes allegations of unjust enrichment, fraud in the inducement, and financial exploitation. There are 47 exhibits attached. That's not someone who's just bitter about boundaries. That's someone who has evidence. The commenter was anonymous, a random username I didn't recognize. But within minutes, people were Googling the case number, finding the public docket, seeing the list of exhibits without being able to access them yet. The comments shifted. Vanessa, maybe you should take this post down until the legal stuff is resolved. 47 exhibits seems like a lot for someone who's just being vindictive. I'm confused. Did you pay for any of the house, or was it all a gift? Vanessa deleted the post at 2:34 p.m., but the internet is forever, and I had screenshots. By Sunday afternoon, 3 of Vanessa's friends had reached out to me through Facebook. Women I'd met briefly at birthday parties and school events. Women who'd smiled politely while Vanessa controlled every conversation. The first message came from Jennifer Marsh. Mrs. Whitmore, I hope you don't mind me contacting you. I've been friends with Vanessa for 2 years, and something about her post yesterday didn't sit right with me. I saw the court case number someone posted. I don't want to overstep, but is she telling people the truth about what happened? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Jennifer, I appreciate you reaching out. I can't discuss the details of the legal case, but I can tell you that everything I've claimed is documented with bank statements, text messages, and receipts. The truth will come out in court. Her response came immediately. That's what I was afraid of. Vanessa has a way of shaping stories, making herself the victim even when she's not. I've seen her do it in our friend group. I just wanted you to know that not everyone believes her version automatically. The second message was from a woman named Paula Torres, a neighbor of Ryan and Vanessa's. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know if you remember me, but we met at Jack's birthday party last year. I live 3 houses down from Ryan and Vanessa. I wanted you to know that I've heard them talking about you, and the things Vanessa says, they don't match what she posted online. She's told multiple neighbors that you're obsessed with their house, that you come by uninvited, that you're unstable. I thought you should know what she's saying about you in the neighborhood. My hands clenched around my phone. Character assassination, systematic and calculated. The third message was the most unexpected. It was from Ryan's best friend from high school, Marcus Webb, someone I hadn't seen in years. Mrs. W., I heard about what's going on through the grapevine. I don't know all the details, but I wanted to tell you something. Ryan called me about 6 months ago, drunk, crying. He said he felt trapped. He said Vanessa controlled everything, what he wore, who he talked to, how he spent money. He said he missed you but didn't know how to fix things without making Vanessa angry. I told him he needed to stand up to her. He said he couldn't. I'm not taking sides in the legal stuff, but I thought you should know. Ryan isn't happy. He hasn't been for a long time. I read Marcus's message 3 times, my vision blurring with tears I refused to shed. My son was trapped, my son was miserable, and my son had chosen that misery over fighting for his family. I forwarded all 3 messages to Margaret with a simple note. Does any of this help our case? Her response: the character assassination stuff is useful. The information about Ryan feeling trapped is heartbreaking, but not legally relevant. However, and this is important, if we can demonstrate a pattern of Vanessa isolating Ryan from family and friends, it strengthens our argument that the house transfer was made under undue influence. Keep documenting everything. Monday morning, Margaret filed the amended complaint with all 47 exhibits attached. By Monday afternoon, the Spokane legal community was buzzing. I knew this because my phone rang at 3:15 p.m. with a call from Patricia Morrison, a reporter for the Spokane Journal. Mrs. Whitmore, my name is Patricia Morrison. I'm a reporter covering family law cases in Spokane County. I've been reviewing the public docket for Whitmore vs. Whitmore, and I'm hoping to get your comment on the allegations. My stomach dropped. I'm not interested in making this a media story. I understand, but the case is already generating interest. The exhibits include some fairly shocking financial documentation. I'm going to write a story either way. I'd rather it include your perspective. Margaret had prepared me for this possibility. Any media inquiries should go through my attorney, Margaret Chen. I'm not making public statements. I respect that, but can I ask, is it true that you gave your son a house worth nearly $500,000 and now you're trying to take it back because he set boundaries with you? The question was loaded, the narrative already forming. I could hear Vanessa's version of events in every word. That's not accurate, I said carefully. The complaint speaks for itself. All of the documentation is in the public record. I suggest you read it. I have read it. 47 exhibits is a lot of evidence for someone who's supposedly just vindictive. Then you should have everything you need for your story. I hung up and immediately called Margaret. A reporter just called me, Patricia Morrison from the Spokane Journal. She's writing a story about the case. Margaret's response was calm. Good. Let her write it. Our documentation is airtight. Any fair reading of those exhibits will show exactly what happened. And Eleanor, sometimes public opinion matters more than legal judgments. If the community sees what Ryan and Vanessa did, it becomes very hard for them to stay in Spokane. You want them to leave? I want them to understand that actions have consequences, Margaret said. Legal consequences, financial consequences, and social consequences. They made this public when Vanessa posted that Instagram story. Now they get to live with the public's response. The article appeared online Tuesday morning with the headline, Grandmother Sues Son for $400,000 House, Generosity or Manipulation. Patricia Morrison had done her homework. The article included the basic facts of the case, quotes from the public complaint detailing the $16,070 in financial support, a timeline of Vanessa's renovations, cross-referenced with Eleanor's payments for utilities, the detail about CPS being called, a statement from Morrison, the attorney representing Ryan and Vanessa. This is a tragic case of buyer's remorse. Mrs. Whitmore freely gave this property to her son and now regrets that decision.
You can't take back a gift 3 years later just because you don't like how your family relationships evolved. A statement from Margaret Chen. This isn't about a gift. This is about a pattern of financial exploitation that continued for 3 years after the property transfer. Mrs. Whitmore gave her son a house with the understanding that she would remain part of her grandchildren's lives.
When she was systematically excluded from the family she'd supported financially, the consideration for that gift failed. The 47 exhibits speak for themselves. But the most damning part of the article was the comment section, which filled up within hours. I actually know this family. The DIL is awful. She's one of those Instagram mom types who cares more about aesthetic than actual family. $16,000 in 3 years while they're doing luxury renovations. That's elder financial abuse. My mother-in-law tried something similar. Some old people can't handle their kids growing up and setting boundaries. Did anyone else read the actual complaint? The grandmother has receipts for everything. This isn't about boundaries, it's about being used as a bank. The CPS call is what gets me. That's so manipulative, calling the government on your kid's grandmother just because you don't like her baking cookies with him. Why did the son let his wife treat his mother this way? Where's his spine? That last comment had 47 upvotes. By Wednesday, the story had been picked up by a Seattle news station, running a segment on grandparent alienation and the legal complexities of family property disputes. By Thursday, I'd received messages from 3 different news outlets asking for interviews. I declined them all, but Vanessa didn't. Friday evening, I was eating dinner when my phone started buzzing with text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Watching you on KXLY right now. Stay strong. Just saw the news story. Can't believe what they did to you. You're so brave for fighting back! I turned on my television to find Vanessa and Ryan sitting on a local news set, both of them dressed conservatively, both of them wearing expressions of wounded innocence. The segment was titled, "Family Feud When Generosity Becomes a Weapon." The anchor, a woman in her 40s with professionally sympathetic eyes, leaned forward. So, Vanessa, you're saying your mother-in-law gave you this house freely, no strings attached? Absolutely, Vanessa said, her voice trembling slightly. Eleanor offered the house when Ryan and I were struggling. She said she wanted us to have stability, to give Emma and Jack a real home. We were so grateful. We never imagined she'd try to take it back. And when did the relationship start to deteriorate? Ryan spoke for the first time, his voice hollow.
It's been gradual. Mom has struggled since my father passed away. She became increasingly critical of how we were raising our children. Small things at first, then bigger disagreements about discipline, diet, screen time. We tried to accommodate her, but eventually we had to set boundaries for our family's well-being. The lies were smooth, practiced, just close enough to truth to be believable if you didn't know the full story. And then she sued you, the anchor prompted. Then she sued us, Vanessa confirmed, tears forming in her eyes. She's trying to take our home, the only home our children have ever known, because we dared to make parenting decisions she disagreed with. It's devastating. The anchor turned to face the camera. We reached out to Eleanor Whitmore for comment, but she declined to appear. Her attorney provided the following statement. The documented evidence in this case tells a very different story than the one being presented in media interviews. We're confident that when all the facts are presented in court, justice will prevail. The segment ended with a shot of Ryan and Vanessa's house, my house, decorated with early Christmas lights, looking warm and inviting and perfect. I turned off the television and sat in the quiet of my apartment, my dinner forgotten, my hands shaking with fury. They'd gone on television. They'd lied to thousands of people. They'd painted themselves as victims and me as a vindictive old woman who couldn't accept healthy boundaries. My phone rang. Margaret. I saw it, she said before I could speak. And before you panic, this is actually good for us. How is this possibly good? Because they just gave testimony on camera that directly contradicts the evidence we're about to present in court. Vanessa said you became increasingly critical of their parenting. We have text messages showing you were following their rules to the letter, desperately trying to maintain access to your grandchildren.
Ryan said the relationship deteriorated gradually. We have bank statements showing you were sending them money until the day they banned you. Margaret's voice hardened. They just locked themselves into a narrative. When we present evidence that destroys that narrative, they'll look like liars. To the judge, to the mediator if we go back to mediation, and to everyone who's following this case. But people believe them now, I said quietly. Some people believe them now, Margaret corrected. But Eleanor, the internet has a long memory. Wait until the trial exhibits become public record. Wait until people can read every text message, see every receipt, follow the timeline we've constructed. The truth has a way of coming out. When does that happen? Trial is set for January 15th. Discovery closes December 20th. Between now and then, we'll be deposing Ryan, Vanessa, and any witnesses they want to call. And they'll depose you. My stomach clenched. I have to sit across from them and answer questions. Yes, but Eleanor, you have one advantage they don't have. What's that? You're telling the truth, and the truth doesn't require rehearsal. The deposition was scheduled for December 4th at Morrison's office, a cramped suite above a dry cleaner that smelled faintly of chemicals and desperation.
Margaret had prepared me for 3 days, running through potential questions, teaching me how to answer clearly and concisely, reminding me again and again, just tell the truth. Don't elaborate, don't get emotional.
Just answer the question you're asked and nothing more. Ryan and Vanessa were already there when I arrived, sitting on a worn leather couch in the waiting area. Not touching, not speaking, existing in the kind of hostile silence that comes from two. Many arguments with no resolution. Ryan looked up when I walked in. Our eyes met for the first time since the mediation, and I saw something in his expression that might have been regret, or shame, or just exhaustion. I looked away first. The deposition room was small, dominated by a conference table and a court reporter with her stenography machine. Morrison sat at one end, Margaret at the other, and I settled into the chair between them. My hands folded in my lap, my heart hammering but my face calm. Mrs. Whitmore, Morrison began after the preliminary statements. Can you tell me in your own words why you transferred the property at 2847 Maple Street to your son? I'd practiced this answer. I wanted Ryan and his family to have stability. I wanted my grandchildren to grow up in a house with history and roots, and I wanted to help my son the way Tom and I had always helped him. Did you attach any conditions to this transfer? Not explicitly, but there was an understanding that I would remain part of the family, that I would continue to have a relationship with my son and grandchildren. An understanding, but nothing in writing. No, it was a gift based on trust and love, not a contract. Morrison smiled slightly, thinking he'd scored a point. So you're admitting there was no actual agreement about your access to the grandchildren? I'm saying that when you give your child your house, your life's work, your husband's legacy, you don't expect to need a contract guaranteeing they'll let you see your own grandchildren. You expect basic human decency. Margaret touched my hand gently, a warning to stick to simple answers. Morrison continued. Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it true that you have trouble accepting that your son is an adult with his own family and his own decisions to make? No. Isn't it true that you criticized Vanessa's parenting choices repeatedly? No. I followed their rules exactly, even when I disagreed with them. But you did disagree with them. I thought some rules were unnecessarily strict, yes, but I never violated them. Isn't it true that you showed up at their house, uninvited multiple times? I blinked. I was invited 3 times a week for 3 years. I had a key. I was part of their family routine until October 29th, when Vanessa told me I was no longer welcome. Morrison consulted his notes. On October 15th, did you arrive at the house 2 hours early for your scheduled visit? I thought back. Yes. Vanessa had called and asked me to come early because she had a meeting with an interior designer. She asked me to come at 2 instead of 4. But you didn't confirm that request in writing. It was a phone call from my daughter-in-law asking for help.
I didn't think I needed written authorization to help my family. The deposition continued for 4 hours. Morrison asked about every payment I'd made, trying to frame them as voluntary gifts rather than exploitation. He asked about my emotional state after Tom's death, suggesting I'd been too grief-stricken to make sound decisions. He asked about my relationship with Emma and Jack, trying to find evidence that I'd overstepped boundaries or undermined Vanessa's authority. But every question had an answer, and every answer was backed up by documentation Margaret would present later. Finally, Morrison leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Whitmore, isn't the truth that you simply regret giving away your house, and now you're using the legal system to punish your son for living his own life?" I looked at him for a long moment, then at Ryan, who was sitting behind his lawyer, his face pale, his eyes on the floor. "Mr. Morrison," I said quietly, "if I regretted giving Ryan the house, I would have said so in 2021 or 2022 or 2023. I didn't pursue legal action until my daughter-in-law called me a toxic influence, banned me from seeing my grandchildren, and called Child Protective Services to investigate me as a child abuser. This isn't about regret. This is about watching 3 years of love and generosity and financial support being repaid with cruelty and exclusion.
This is about a woman who took my house, erased my husband's memory from every corner of it, and then tried to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. I stood up. "So no, Mr. Morrison, this isn't regret. This is justice." Margaret stood with me. "We're done here." December arrived with a vengeance, temperatures dropping below freezing, snow blanketing Spokane, in the kind of postcard-perfect winter that made everything look clean and new, even when underneath it was all still broken. I'd stopped counting the days until trial. Counting made it real, made the waiting unbearable. Instead, I focused on the small rituals that kept me grounded. Morning coffee, evening walks, the crossword puzzle that Tom had loved and I'd inherited along with his reading glasses and his tendency to solve problems methodically, step by step. Margaret called on December 8th with news. Ryan's attorney reached out. "They want to settle." My heart stuttered. "What are the terms?" 60-40 split in your favor. House sells, you get 60% of proceeds, they keep 40%. They repay the $16,070. And, this is new, they're offering supervised visitation with Emma and Jack, twice monthly, with the supervision being removed after 6 months if things go well. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. "They're using the children as leverage again." "Yes," Margaret said bluntly, "but Eleanor, this is a good offer. Better than the 70-30 we proposed. You'd walk away with approximately $290,000 plus restitution. That's enough to buy your own place, rebuild your life, and still have substantial savings. And I'd get to see my grandchildren, under their terms and conditions, with supervision, at least initially." I stared at Tom's photo on my bookshelf. "What would you do?" I asked him silently. "Would you take the money and accept the scraps of access to Emma and Jack? Or would you fight on principle, even if it meant losing them completely?" Tom's smile in the photo didn't answer, but I knew what he'd say if he could. Fight for what's right, not what's easy. "What do you think?" I asked Margaret. "Honestly, I think we can do better at trial. The evidence is overwhelmingly in your favor. But trials are unpredictable. A settlement is guaranteed, and the visitation clause means you'd see Emma and Jack again, which seems to be what you want most. What I wanted most. Not justice, not vindication, not even the money. Just my grandchildren's laughter on Tuesday afternoons, their small hands in mine, the unconditional love I'd thought was mine forever until it wasn't. How long do I have to decide? They want an answer by Friday. 3 days. Can I think about it? Of course. But Eleanor, one more thing. Ryan wants to talk to you. Not through lawyers, just the two of you. He asked if you'd meet him. Every instinct screamed, don't give him the chance to manipulate you. Don't let him use your love against you again. Don't be weak. But underneath the instinct was a quieter voice that sounded like Tom. He's still your son. Where? I heard myself ask. Neutral location. He suggested the coffee shop where you used to take him when he was in high school. Atticus, coffee. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Atticus, where Ryan had studied for his SATs while I sipped tea and helped him with vocabulary flashcards. Where we'd celebrated his teaching job offer. Where Tom had been alive and our family had been intact and everything had made sense. Tell him I'll be there, I said. I arrived at Atticus at 1:55 p.m., early, because lateness felt like weakness, and I needed every advantage I could gather. The coffee shop looked the same. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the smell of espresso and old books, creating an atmosphere of comfortable intellectualism that had always made Ryan feel at home. He was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 mugs of tea in front of him. Earl Grey for me, English breakfast for him, the way we'd always ordered. He stood when I approached, his movements uncertain, a man who didn't know if he was allowed to hug his own mother. Mom, he said, his voice cracking on the single syllable. Ryan. I slid into the chair across from him, not offering an embrace, not making this easy. We sat in silence for a long moment, the tea steaming between us like an offering neither of us knew how to accept. Thank you for coming, Ryan said finally. I wasn't sure you would. Your lawyer said you wanted to talk, so talk. He flinched at my tone but pushed forward. I need you to understand that I never wanted any of this. The lawsuit, the media coverage, he gestured vaguely, the destruction of our family. Then why didn't you stop it? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. Why didn't you tell Vanessa she was wrong to call CPS? Why didn't you stand up for me even once in 3 years? Ryan's hands tightened around his mug. Because I'm weak, he said quietly. Because every time I tried to push back on Vanessa's decisions, she made my life hell. Silent treatments, crying, threats about how I didn't support her, how I was choosing my mother over my wife, how I was a terrible husband. So you chose to be a terrible son instead. Yes. The admission hung in the air between us, stark and honest. Yes, I did. Because living with Vanessa when she's angry is like living in a war zone, and His voice broke. I just wanted peace, Mom. I just wanted my home to be peaceful. I thought about Marcus's message, about Ryan calling him drunk and miserable, about the cage my son had built around himself with cowardice and conflict avoidance. Ryan, do you love her? The question seemed to surprise him. He stared into his tea for a long moment. I don't know anymore. I love who she was when we met, or who I thought she was. But the woman I live with now, the one who spends money we don't have and treats people like servants and uses our children as weapons. I don't know that person, and I don't know if I love her. Then why are you still fighting me? Why not just let me have the house, take the kids, and start over? Because she'll destroy me in a divorce, Ryan said bluntly. Her father is Cody Jenkins. You remember Cody? He has connections all over Spokane. Lawyers, judges, business leaders. If I try to leave Vanessa, she'll take Emma and Jack, and I'll be lucky to see them twice a month. At least right now I'm in their lives every day. The logic was twisted, but I understood it. The same logic that had kept me silent for 3 years. Accepting crumbs rather than losing everything. So you want me to settle, I said. Take less money, accept supervised visitation, and let Vanessa win. I want this to end, Ryan corrected. I want my children to stop hearing their parents argue every night. I want to stop watching my wife have panic attacks about losing the house. He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. I want my mom back." The words hit like a physical blow. "You want me back? Ryan, you're the one who left. You stood there while Vanessa called me toxic. You let her call the government to investigate me as a child abuser. You went on television and lied about what happened. And now you want me back." "I know," he whispered. "I know I don't deserve it. But Mom, please, I'm drowning. I'm trapped in a marriage I can't leave, in a house that's destroying our family, in a life that's nothing like what I wanted. And the only person who ever made me feel like I could do better, be better, that's you. That's always been you." Tears were streaming down his face now, and despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lawsuit and the 3 years of watching him choose his wife over his mother, I felt my own eyes burning. "If I settle," I said carefully, "what changes? Vanessa still controls everything. She still decides when I see Emma and Jack. She still treats you like a puppet and me like a threat. What exactly am I getting except slightly more money in the same broken relationship?" Ryan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, a gesture so familiar from his childhood. It made my chest ache. "I'll be different," he said. "I'll stand up to her. I'll make sure the visitation actually happens. Not just on paper, but in reality. I'll start couples therapy, try to fix whatever's broken in our marriage, or end it properly. I just need time, Mom. And I need you to not destroy us in court while I figure it out." "Time," I repeated. "How much time? Another 3 years of Vanessa making rules and you breaking them when it's convenient. Another decade of waiting for you to grow a spine. I deserve that," Ryan said. "I deserve all of it. But Emma and Jack don't. They don't deserve to watch their family tear itself apart in public. They don't deserve to read someday about how their parents and grandmother went to war over money and pride." He was right about that, at least. Emma and Jack were innocent in all of this. Collateral damage in a war between adults who should have known better. "I need to think about it," I said, standing up. "The settlement, the visitation, all of it. I need to decide if I can trust you to actually change, or if you're just telling me what I want to hear so Vanessa doesn't lose her house." "Mom, wait. No." The word came out, firm, final. "You've had 3 years to figure out how to be a good son. I'm not making a decision about my future based on promises you've broken before. Margaret said you need an answer by Friday. You'll have it by Friday." I walked out of Atticus into the December cold, leaving Ryan sitting at our table with 2 mugs of tea going cold, just like the relationship we used to have. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Tom was buried, parking near the section where his headstone stood simple and elegant. Thomas James Whitmore, 1952 to 2019, beloved husband and father. I sat on the frozen ground beside his grave, not caring about the cold seeping through my jeans, not caring about the looks from other visitors who probably thought I was crazy. "I don't know what to do," I said out loud, my breath fogging in the December air. "Ryan wants me to settle, take the money, accept limited visitation. Let Vanessa keep controlling everything. Part of me wants to say yes because I miss Emma and Jack so much it physically hurts, but Tom, you should have seen how weak he was, how defeated. He's become exactly the kind of man you were afraid he'd become, someone who chooses comfort over courage, peace over principle." The wind rustled through the bare trees, carrying no answers. "Margaret thinks we can win at trial. She thinks a judge will see the evidence and award me everything. The full value of the house, the restitution, maybe even punitive damages for the CPS call. But winning in court doesn't get me my grandchildren back. It doesn't heal what's broken between me and Ryan. It just proves I was right and they were wrong. And where does that leave us?" I traced Tom's name carved into the stone, the letters familiar under my fingertips.
You always said that being right isn't the same as being happy, that sometimes you have to choose between justice and peace. I never understood what you meant until now. If I push for trial, I get justice. If I settle, maybe I get peace.
"But Tom, What if neither option gives me back my family? A crow landed on a nearby headstone, watching me with intelligent black eyes. I wish you were here, I whispered. I wish you could tell me what to do. I wish you could talk to Ryan the way you used to, man to man, and make him understand that marriage isn't about surrendering yourself to keep someone else happy. I wish. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Emma. I took Jack's iPad when Mom wasn't looking. Please don't settle. Please don't let us keep living in that house. It makes everyone sad. My hands started shaking. I read the message again. Then a third time. Before I could respond, another text arrived. Mom yells all the time now. Dad cries in the bathroom. They think we can't hear, but we can. The house is bad luck. Grandma made it good, and now it's bad again. Please make them sell it. Love, Emma. A third message, this one with a photo attached. Emma and Jack in their pajamas holding a sign made from construction paper. We miss Grandma. We miss cookies. I started crying. Right there in the cemetery. Tears freezing on my face in the December cold. Tom's grave offered no answers, but Emma's message did. My grandchildren were suffering, not because I was fighting for justice, but because they were living in a house filled with resentment and fear, watching their parents' marriage crumble under the weight of Vanessa's control and Ryan's cowardice. I took a screenshot of Emma's messages and forwarded them to Margaret with a simple note. Change of strategy. I need to talk to you immediately. Then I typed a response to Emma. I love you so much, sweetheart. Everything I'm doing is to make things better for you and Jack, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. Be brave. I'm being brave too. 3 dots appeared, showing Emma was typing. Then, okay, Grandma. Can we have cookies again someday? Yes, I typed back, my vision blurring. I promise. Someday soon, we'll make cookies again. Margaret's office at 5:30 p.m. felt like a war room. Papers spread across every surface, her laptop open to multiple browser tabs of case law and precedents. Tell me what you're thinking, she said after I showed her Emma's messages. I'm thinking that settling means Emma and Jack stay in that toxic environment with Vanessa controlling everything and Ryan too weak to protect them. I'm thinking that if we push to trial and win, the house gets sold, they have to find something smaller and more affordable. And maybe, just maybe, that financial pressure forces Ryan to actually stand up to his wife or leave her. Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me. That's a big gamble. You could push for trial and lose access to your grandchildren entirely. Vanessa will be furious. She'll make sure you never see Emma and Jack again. She's already done that, I pointed out. Monthly supervised visits isn't access, it's performance art. It's Vanessa, controlling the narrative while pretending to be generous. So you want to reject the settlement. I want to go to trial with one modification to what we're asking for. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What modification? I don't want 70% of the house proceeds. I want 85%, and I want the other 15% put in a trust for Emma and Jack's college education, with me as the trustee. Ryan and Vanessa get nothing except the $16,070 debt forgiven. Margaret's eyes widened. Eleanor, that's brutal. That leaves them with essentially nothing after legal fees. It leaves them with the opportunity to start over, I corrected, to find a house they can actually afford, to build a life that isn't funded by my generosity. And it ensures that Emma and Jack benefit from their great-grandparents' legacy, even if their parents squandered it. And visitation rights. We pursue grandparent visitation through family court separately. No negotiations with Vanessa. Let a judge decide what's in Emma and Jack's best interest, not what's convenient for their mother's control issues. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her fingers steepled under her chin, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of a lawyer who'd just been handed a flawless strategy. "This will destroy your relationship with Ryan," she warned. "Possibly permanently." "My relationship with Ryan is already destroyed," I said quietly. "He destroyed it when he chose Vanessa's approval over his mother's dignity. Maybe someday he'll rebuild himself into someone worthy of a relationship. But that's his work to do, not mine. And if Vanessa retaliates, makes it impossible for you to see the kids even with a court order, then we document every violation and take her back to court. And we keep doing that until either she complies or Ryan finally finds the courage to leave her." Margaret began typing notes on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'll draft the response to their settlement offer tonight.
We'll formally reject it and file our revised demand tomorrow. Trial starts January 15th, which gives them 1 month to panic." "Good," I said, standing up. "Let them panic. Let them face consequences for the first time in their lives.
Let them understand what it feels like when someone they used finally stops being useful." As I drove home through the snowy streets of Spokane, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness. That was too far away still. But something close to it. Purpose, clarity, the unshakable certainty that I was finally fighting for the right thing in the right way. Emma and Jack wanted out of that house. Ryan was drowning in his own cowardice. Vanessa was a narcissist who would never change, and I was done being the one who paid for all of it. Margaret's response to Morrison arrived by email Friday morning at 9:17 a.m. "After careful consideration, Mrs. Whitmore declines your settlement offer. We will proceed to trial with the following revised demand. Mrs. Whitmore seeks 85% of proceeds from the sale of 2,847 Maple Street, with the remaining 15% placed in an irrevocable trust for Emma and Jack Whitmore's college education, with Eleanor Whitmore as trustee. The $16,070 in restitution for financial support is waived. All claims regarding visitation will be pursued separately through family court. We look forward to presenting our evidence at trial. Regards, Margaret Chen, attorney at law." Morrison's response came within an hour. "Your client has lost her mind. This demand is unconscionable and will be met with vigorous opposition. See you in court." I screenshot the email exchange and sent it to the group chat Jennifer Marsh had created. Me, Jennifer, Paula Torres, and 2 other women who'd reached out offering support. I'd titled it "The Resistance" as a joke, but it had become something real, something powerful. Jennifer responded immediately. "He sounds scared." Paula: "Good. They should be scared." A third voice, Karen Boyd, one of Vanessa's former book club friends. "I just drove by their house. There's a for sale sign in the yard. They're already trying to sell before the trial." My heart stuttered. They were selling the house voluntarily, trying to control the narrative, trying to avoid a court-ordered sale that would be public record. I called Margaret immediately. "They're trying to sell the house before trial." "I saw," Margaret said calmly. "I've already filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order, preventing any sale or transfer of the property until the case is resolved. The judge will rule on it Monday morning. Can they really just sell it? Not if the court grants our TRO. And given the evidence we've presented showing the property transfer was potentially fraudulent, I'm confident the judge will freeze the asset." "So we stopped them. We stopped them," Margaret confirmed. "Eleanor, this is getting ugly fast. They're desperate. Desperate. People make mistakes. Stay alert, document everything, and do not engage with them directly under any circumstances." "I won't," I promised. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The knock on my door came at 11:47 p.m. on Saturday night, loud and insistent and furious. Through the peephole, I saw Vanessa, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared, her eyes wild with something that looked like panic mixed with rage. "Eleanor!" she screamed, pounding on the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk right now. I stepped back from the door, my phone already in my hand, 911 dialed but not yet called. Vanessa, go home. We have nothing to discuss. Nothing to discuss. Her laugh was unhinged. You're trying to take everything from us. Our house, our security, our children's future. You're a vindictive old bitch who can't handle that we don't need you anymore. Lower your voice, I said firmly. You're going to wake my neighbors. I don't care about your neighbors. I care about the fact that you're destroying my family because your feelings got hurt. I pressed record on my phone's voice memo app, capturing every word. Vanessa, I'm recording this conversation. You're trespassing and harassing me at midnight. If you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the police. Call them! She shrieked. Call them so they can hear how you're using the legal system to abuse your own family! Call them so everyone can see what a monster you really are. A door opened down the hall. My neighbor, Mr. Peterson, appeared in his bathrobe. Ma'am, I'm calling the police. You need to leave before they arrive. Vanessa spun toward him. Mind your own business. You're banging on doors and screaming at midnight. You made it my business. Mr. Peterson already had his phone out. Vanessa turned back to my door, her face pressed close to the peephole. This isn't over, Eleanor. You think you've won because you have some receipts and a lawyer. You haven't won anything. I'll make sure Emma and Jack forget you exist. I'll tell them you abandoned them, that you chose money over them, that you're the villain in this story. And they'll believe me because children always believe their mother. The words were designed to wound, and they did. But underneath the pain was something else, evidence. I'm ending this conversation, I said clearly for the recording. Leave now or the police will remove you. Vanessa kicked my door once, hard enough to rattle the frame. Then I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway, the slam of the stairwell door, the blessed silence of her absence. Mr. Peterson appeared at my peephole. Mrs. Whitmore, are you okay? I opened the door. I'm fine, Mr. Peterson. Thank you for intervening. That woman is unhinged, he said bluntly. I've called the police anyway. They should have a report on file in case she comes back. The police arrived 20 minutes later, took statements from both Mr. Peterson and me, listened to my recording of Vanessa's threats, and filed an incident report. Ma'am, would you like to pursue a restraining order? The officer asked. I thought about it. A restraining order would make Vanessa look unstable in court, but it would also further enrage her, make her more desperate, possibly more dangerous. Not yet, I said, but I want this documented in case I need to pursue one later. Understood. We'll keep this on file. Call us immediately if she returns. After they left, I sat in my quiet apartment, my phone in my hand, the recording of Vanessa's midnight breakdown ready to send to Margaret. But first, I sent it to the group chat. Jennifer's response came immediately. Oh my God, she's losing it. Karen, this is the Vanessa I remember from book club. Charming until you disagree with her, then absolutely vicious. Paula, forward this to your lawyer, ASAP. This is evidence of harassment and threats. I sent it to Margaret with a simple message. Vanessa paid me a visit tonight. Thought you should hear it. Her response came 5 minutes later, despite the late hour. Holy shit, this is gold. She just admitted on tape that she plans to alienate the children from you. Forward this to me officially so I can introduce it as evidence. Eleanor, she's destroying her own case. I forwarded the recording, then set my phone aside and walked to my window. Outside, Spokane slept under a blanket of December snow. Peaceful and quiet and beautiful. Somewhere across town, in the house that used to be mine, Vanessa was probably still raging. Ryan was probably still crying in the bathroom, and Emma and Jack were probably awake, hearing everything, absorbing the toxicity that I was fighting to free them from. 38 days until trial. 38 days until everything came out in public record. Every text message, every receipt, every piece of evidence showing exactly who was the villain in this story. I touched Tom's photo one more time. "We're almost there," I whispered. "Justice is almost restored." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Christmas Eve arrived with the kind of crushing loneliness that only the holidays can deliver. All around Spokane, families were gathering, children squealing over presents, grandparents holding grandchildren. The air filled with cinnamon and pine and the particular magic that comes from being surrounded by people who love you. I was sitting in my apartment with a frozen dinner and a Hallmark movie I wasn't watching. My phone had been silent all day. No calls from Ryan, no texts from Emma sneaking messages on Jack's iPad. Nothing from Margaret because even lawyers took Christmas Eve off. Just me and the hum of my refrigerator and the couple arguing through the thin walls about whose family to visit tomorrow. At 7:34 p.m., someone knocked on my door, not pounding like Vanessa's midnight visit. Just a soft, hesitant knock that sounded almost apologetic for existing. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan standing alone, no Vanessa beside him, no anger in his posture. He looked exhausted, defeated, holding a manila envelope in his hands like it contained either salvation or condemnation. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk? Please." "It's Christmas Eve, Ryan. Shouldn't you be home with your family?" "You're my family," his voice cracked, "and I need you to know something before the trial. Before everything becomes public record and there's no taking it back." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. He entered my small apartment, looking around at the modest furniture, the lack of holiday decorations, the TV playing a movie about people finding love and family and happy endings that felt like fiction. "You're spending Christmas alone," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I'm spending Christmas the way Vanessa wanted. Away from you, away from Emma and Jack, no longer a toxic influence on your perfect life." Ryan flinched. "It's not perfect. It hasn't been perfect in years. Maybe it never was." He held out the manila envelope. "This is for you, for Margaret, really. But I wanted you to see it first." I took the envelope, my hand steady despite the fear curling in my stomach. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside were documents, legal documents, financial records, and a handwritten letter in Ryan's familiar script. I pulled out the letter first. "Mom, I've spent the last 3 weeks doing something I should have done 3 years ago, documenting everything. Every time Vanessa manipulated a financial decision. Every time she convinced me to ask you for money while she spent thousands on things we didn't need. Every time she talked about you behind your back, calling you names I won't repeat, strategizing about how to minimize your influence on the kids. I've been a coward. Worse than a coward. I've been complicit. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really I was just too weak to stand up to her. Too afraid of her anger, her tears, her threats to leave and take Emma and Jack. But watching her these last few weeks, the Instagram posts, the TV interview, the midnight visit to your apartment, I finally saw her clearly. Not as the woman I married, but as the woman she became. Or maybe always was, and I was too blind to see it. The enclosed documents show everything. Bank statements, proving Vanessa spent $43,000 on luxury items in the same period you were covering our essential expenses. Text messages, where she coached me on exactly what to say to get money from you. Her private journal, yes, I read it. I'm done respecting privacy that was used to plan your destruction. Where she writes about you with contempt and cruelty, documentation of the CPS call, including her draft of the complaint she wrote before, calling them, proof that her parents, Cody and Catherine, were involved in planting the newspaper article I'm filing for divorce. I've already retained an attorney, not Morrison, someone who specializes in custody cases. I'm moving out on December 26th. I'm taking Emma and Jack with me. I know this doesn't fix what I've done. I know I've destroyed your trust and our relationship. But Mom, I need you to know. You were right about everything. The house was a trap. The financial support was exploitation. Vanessa's control was abuse. And I let it happen because I was too weak to fight. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for one thing. When you win at trial, and you will win, please set aside money for Emma and Jack's future. They shouldn't pay for their parents' mistakes. I love you. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. Ryan. My hands were shaking so hard the letter trembled. I read it again, then a third time, tears streaming down my face. You're leaving her, I whispered. I already left her. Ryan's voice was hollow. I moved into a hotel 3 days ago. Emma and Jack have been staying with me on the nights I'm allowed, which Vanessa fights every single time because she knows she's losing control. And the documents? Everything you need to win. Everything that proves you were right to fight back. He laughed bitterly. Vanessa kept records of her own manipulation. She was so proud of how she'd managed you, she wrote it all down like a trophy. I pulled out the other documents. Bank statements, highlighted in yellow, showing the pattern. Vanessa's purchases in one column, my payments for their utilities in another, the dates matching perfectly. Text messages from Vanessa to Ryan. Tell your mom we need help with the electric bill. Don't mention I just bought the new couch. She's getting suspicious about the money. Remind her how much Emma and Jack love her. That always works. If she doesn't come through with cash for the property taxes, start crying about how stressed you are. She can't resist when you cry. And then the journal entries, handwritten in Vanessa's distinctive script. Eleanor is so predictable. Play the concerned parent card, and she folds immediately. Ryan's guilt about his father is useful too. She'll do anything to stay connected to Tom's memory through him. The house renovations are perfect. Every time we erase something Tom built, Eleanor dies a little inside, but she won't say anything because she's terrified of losing access to the grandkids. It's actually hilarious how much power we have. Need to start planning the exit strategy. Once the kids are older and don't need as much babysitting, Eleanor becomes a liability. Her constant nostalgia and sadness are dragging down our family vibe. Maybe we can engineer a situation where she chooses to step back, so we look like the victims if anyone asks. The cruelty was breathtaking. The calculation was even worse. She planned this, I said slowly. From the beginning, she planned to use me and then discard me. Yes, Ryan's face was gray. And I let her because I was too weak to see what she was doing. Or maybe I saw it and didn't care because it was easier than fighting. Ryan, I stopped, not knowing what to say. How do you respond when your son hands you the weapon to destroy his own life? I know what this means, he said quietly. When Margaret presents this evidence at trial, Vanessa's going to look like a monster. The judge will probably award you everything you asked for. And Vanessa, he swallowed hard. Vanessa will lose what little credibility she has left. She'll blame you. She already does. She's been calling me nonstop since I moved out, screaming about betrayal, about how I'm destroying our family, about how she'll make sure I never see the kids again. He pulled out his phone and played a voicemail on speaker. Vanessa's voice filled my apartment, shrill and venomous. You think you can just leave me? You think you can side with your pathetic mother against me? I will destroy you, Ryan. I will take Emma and Jack, and you'll be lucky to see them on holidays. I will tell everyone what a weak, spineless failure you are. Your mother has poisoned you against me, and you're too stupid to see it. Call me back right now or I'm changing the locks and keeping the kids. Ryan ended the playback. I have 17 more messages like that. My lawyer says they're evidence of parental alienation. and harassment. Combined with what you have, we might actually be able to protect Emma and Jack from her. We, I repeated carefully. I'm not asking to be part of your lawsuit, Ryan clarified quickly. That ship has sailed. But in my custody case, if you were willing to testify about what you've witnessed, the way Vanessa treats people, her spending habits, her manipulation, it could help me get primary custody. I looked at my son, this man who'd betrayed me and hurt me, and finally found the courage to do the right thing. Too late to save our relationship. Maybe, but not too late to save his children. I'll testify, I said, for Emma and Jack, not for you. I know, he nodded, accepting the boundary. Thank you. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, two people who used to know how to be family to each other, now strangers navigating the wreckage. Ryan, why now? I asked finally. What changed? 3 weeks ago you were offering me a settlement that would have let Vanessa keep control of everything. Now you're handing me the evidence to destroy her. What happened? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. Emma told me about the message she sent you, the one about how the house makes everyone sad, how she wants you to make us sell it. His voice broke. My 7-year-old daughter had to sneak her brother's iPad to beg her grandmother to save her from her own home. That's when I realized we weren't protecting the kids by staying together. We were poisoning them. He wiped his eyes roughly. And then Vanessa went to your apartment at midnight screaming threats. I wasn't there, but Emma was awake. She heard her mother talking about how she'd make you disappear from their lives, how she'd turn them against you. Emma came to me crying, asking why Mommy hated Grandma, asking if Grandma hated us too. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that Grandma loves them more than anything, that Grandma gave us a house because she wanted them to be happy, that grown-ups sometimes make mistakes and hurt people they love, and it's our job to fix those mistakes even when it's hard. Fresh tears burned in my eyes. How did she respond? She asked if we could make you cookies for Christmas. Ryan's smile was sad and genuine. She said cookies make everything better, and if we made you enough cookies, maybe you wouldn't be sad anymore. I actually laughed, a wet, broken sound. She's not wrong. No, she's not. Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a Tupperware container. We made you cookies, Emma, Jack, and me, last night at the hotel. They're not as good as the ones you used to make with them, but I took the container, my hands shaking, and opened it. Inside were misshapen sugar cookies, frosted in multiple colors, decorated with the enthusiastic chaos only children could create. They insisted on writing messages, Ryan said softly. Emma did the letters. Jack added the sprinkles. A lot of sprinkles. I looked at the cookies through blurred vision. We miss you, Grandma, in wobbly icing. Soiree, with backward letters. Love, Emma and Jack, surrounded by approximately 1 pound of rainbow sprinkles. I sat down heavily, the container in my lap, and cried. Not the angry tears of betrayal or the frustrated tears of injustice. These were the tears of something breaking open inside my chest. Grief and relief and love all mixed together. Ryan knelt beside my chair, not touching me, just present. Mom, I can't undo the last 3 years. I can't give you back the house or the time or the relationship we used to have. But I can give you the truth. All of it. Documented, witnessed, ready to present in court. He stood up. Margaret has my number. Tell her to call me when she's ready to go through everything. I'll testify if needed. I'll do whatever helps you win and helps me protect Emma and Jack from their mother. At the door, he paused. Merry Christmas, Mom. I hope. His voice caught. I hope someday you can forgive me. Not now. I don't deserve it now. But someday. Ryan, I called as he started to leave. He turned back, hope and fear warring in his expression. Come back tomorrow, I said quietly. Bring Emma and Jack. We'll have Christmas dinner. Nothing fancy. Just pot roast and vegetables and cookies for dessert, the way we used to. Mom, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. But it's Christmas, and my grandchildren made me cookies. And I'm tired of spending holidays alone because their mother is a narcissist and their father used to be a coward. I met his eyes. You hurt me, Ryan. Badly. It's going to take a long time for me to trust you again. But Emma and Jack didn't hurt me. And they shouldn't spend Christmas in a hotel because their parents' marriage imploded. We'll be here, Ryan said, his voice thick with emotion. What time? 2 o'clock. And Ryan, don't tell Vanessa. I don't need her showing up with police claiming I'm kidnapping the children I'm not allowed to see. She doesn't even know where you live, Ryan said. I never told her your apartment address. That's why she had to wait until she saw your car in the parking lot that night she came screaming. Small mercies. After he left, I sat with the container of cookies in my lap, Tom's photo watching from the bookshelf, the Hallmark movie still playing its predictable story of redemption and second chances. Maybe, I thought, real life could have happy endings too. Not the same as before, not unscarred. But possible. Messy and complicated and hard-won. But possible. I ate one of Emma's cookies. It was too sweet and the frosting was gritty and there were so many sprinkles I could feel the crunch in my teeth. It was perfect. Christmas Day arrived with unusual warmth. Temperatures climbing to 45 degrees, the snow melting into slush, everything wet and messy and alive with possibility. I spent the morning cooking. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes, green beans with almonds. The yeast rolls Tom used to love, his mother's recipe that I'd made so many times I didn't need to look at the card anymore. And for dessert, a chocolate cake. Because Emma had once told me chocolate cake was fancy cookies, and 7-year-old logic was irrefutable. At 1:47 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan with a child holding each hand. Emma in a red velvet dress that was slightly too small. Probably from last year. Probably all Ryan could grab when he hastily packed their things. Jack in a sweater vest that made him look like a tiny professor, his hair sticking up at odd angles because no one had thought to bring hair gel to the hotel. I opened the door, and both children launched themselves at me with the force of small, love-powered missiles. Grandma! Emma's arms wrapped around my waist. We missed you so much. So much, Jack echoed, his face pressed into my stomach. Dad said you made pot roast. I looked over their heads at Ryan, who was watching with an expression caught between grief and gratitude, seeing what he'd almost destroyed, understanding the weight of what I was giving back to him. Merry Christmas, I said, and meant it. Dinner was chaotic and loud and perfect. Emma talked non-stop about her school play where she'd been a tree. The best tree, Grandma. Everyone said so. Jack demonstrated his new mastery of knock-knock jokes, none of which made sense, all of which were hilarious. Ryan was quiet mostly, letting the kids fill the silence, but occasionally he'd catch my eye, and I'd see the gratitude there, the understanding that this was mercy, not forgiveness. After dinner, we made cookies. The kitchen in my small apartment wasn't designed for 4 people, so we kept bumping into each other, flour ending up on everyone's clothes, Emma accidentally dropping an entire bottle of sprinkles into the dough and declaring it improved. Grandma, Jack asked while pressing a star-shaped cutter into dough. Are you and Dad friends again? The kitchen went silent. Ryan froze, waiting for my answer. I chose my words carefully. Your dad and I are working on being family again. It takes time when grown-ups hurt each other's feelings. But Jack, I want you to know I never stopped loving you and Emma. Not for one single day. Even when Mom said you were toxic, Emma asked, her voice small. Ryan's face went white. Emma, where did you hear? I heard you and Mom fighting, Emma said, matter-of-factly. She said Grandma was toxic, and we couldn't see her anymore. But you don't seem toxic, Grandma. You seem like cookies. Out of the mouths of babes. Your mom and I disagree about some things, I said carefully. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you, or that I don't love you. Sometimes families are complicated. Are you and Mom going to keep fighting in court? Emma asked. At 7 years old, she knew too much, had heard too much, carried too much weight for such small shoulders. Yes, I said honestly. Because children deserve truth, delivered gently. Your mom and I have to let a judge help us figure some things out. It might be confusing and sad for a while. But Emma, Jack, I need you to know this isn't your fault. None of this is because of anything you did. Is that why Dad moved to a hotel? Jack asked. Ryan knelt down to his son's level. Buddy, Mom and I are having some problems in our marriage.
Sometimes when grown-ups have problems, they need space to figure things out.
But you and Emma, you didn't cause this, and both Mom and I love you very much. But you love Grandma more now? Jack's question was innocent, curious, trying to make sense of loyalties that shouldn't have to be explained to a 5-year-old. I love Grandma always, Ryan said firmly. I made some mistakes that hurt her feelings, and I'm trying to fix those mistakes. But love isn't a competition. I can love Grandma and Mom and you and Emma all at the same time. Even when you're fighting? Even when we're fighting? Emma considered this while adding more sprinkles to her cookie. I love Grandma even when Mom says not to. Is that okay? The question shattered something in my chest. Oh, sweetheart. I pulled her into a hug. It's more than okay. You love whoever your heart tells you to love. Your mom is allowed to be angry with me, but you don't have to feel what she feels. Your heart is your own. We finished the cookies in quieter contemplation. Children processing information they shouldn't have to understand. Adults carrying guilt for exposing them to it. At 6:30 p.m., Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. Vanessa, I asked quietly, while the kids were distracted by decorating cookies. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages. He showed me the most recent. Vanessa, if you don't bring my children home immediately, I'm calling the police. This is parental kidnapping. Is it? I asked. Legally? No. I have equal custody until the divorce hearing. She's just trying to control the situation. He typed a response. The kids are safe with me and my mother. We'll be back to the hotel by 8 p.m. Stop threatening legal action you can't back up. Her response was immediate. Your mother! You took my children to that woman after everything she's done. Ryan, this is the last straw. I'm filing for emergency custody tomorrow. Ryan put his phone away. She won't win. My lawyer says her pattern of harassment and alienation combined with the evidence of financial manipulation makes her look unstable, but she'll try. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. This was always going to happen once I stood up to her. Better now than in another 3 years when the kids are even more damaged by watching our toxic marriage. At 7:45 p.m., I walked Ryan and the kids to their car. Emma hugged me goodbye with the intensity of someone afraid it might be the last time. We'll see each other again soon, I promised her. Your dad and I are going to make sure of it. Promise? Her dark eyes, Tom's eyes, searched my face for lies. Promise. Jack hugged me next, shorter but equally fierce. Thanks for cookies, Grandma. Any time, sweetheart. Ryan was last. He stood awkwardly, unsure if a hug was allowed, if he'd earned the right to physical affection from the mother he'd betrayed. I made the decision for him, pulling him into a brief embrace. You did the right thing, I said quietly. Finally. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a start. I'll keep doing the right thing, he promised, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I watched their car pull out of the parking lot, Emma and Jack waving through the back window, and felt something that had been frozen in my chest for months begin to thaw. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of forgiveness. The first tender shoots of healing pushing through frozen ground. Inside my apartment, I called Margaret. "Merry Christmas," she answered. "Everything okay?" "Ryan came by today. He brought Emma and Jack for dinner, and he brought something else. Evidence. Documents, text messages, journal entries from Vanessa. Everything we need to prove systematic manipulation and exploitation." Silence on the other end. Then, "How much evidence?" "Enough to bury her. He's filing for divorce. He wants to testify on our behalf." Holy shit. Margaret's professional composure cracked. "Eleanor, if Ryan testifies and provides internal documents showing Vanessa's planning and manipulation, we don't just win, we win decisively. The judge might award you the full value of the house, plus punitive damages." "I don't want punitive damages," I said. "I just want what we discussed. 85% of the proceeds, 15% in trust for the kids, and Vanessa exposed for what she really is." "You'll get it. All of it." Margaret's voice carried the confidence of a lawyer who knew she'd just been handed a perfect case. "I'll need to meet with Ryan this week to go through everything, get his testimony properly documented. Can you make that happen?" "I'll make it happen." After I hung up, I walked to my window overlooking the parking lot. Spokane spread out before me, lights twinkling in the December darkness, families in warm houses celebrating holidays together. I was alone in my apartment, but I'd spent the day with my son and grandchildren. I had a freezer full of cookies made with love. I had evidence that would restore justice, and I had something I'd lost months ago: hope. Tom's photo watched from the bookshelf. I raised my mug of tea to him in a silent toast. "We're going to win," I told him. "Not just in court, in the ways that matter. Ryan's finally fighting for what's right. Emma and Jack are going to be okay. And Vanessa," I smiled. "Vanessa's about to learn that actions have consequences." The trial was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks until everything became public record. 3 weeks until justice was restored and arrogance was punished. I'd waited this long. I could wait a little longer. The trial began on January 15th, with a courtroom that felt more like a theater than a place of justice. Every seat in the gallery was filled. Neighbors, reporters, 3 of Vanessa's former friends who'd switched sides after seeing the evidence, and Marcus Webb, Ryan's high school friend, who'd driven from Seattle just to watch the proceedings. Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to Bradley Morrison, though he'd tried to get her recused on that basis, was a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and a reputation for having zero tolerance for manipulation or theatrics. Margaret had told me this was the best possible judge for our case. "She sees through bullshit," Margaret had said with rare profanity, "and Vanessa is about to bring a truckload of it." We were right. Vanessa arrived dressed like she was attending a funeral. Black dress, pearls, minimal makeup designed to make her look vulnerable and sympathetic. She sat beside Bradley Morrison with tissues already in hand, ready for tears that would be deployed at strategic moments. Ryan sat in the gallery behind us, having already been designated as my witness, rather than a party to the suit. He'd lost weight in the 3 weeks since Christmas, his face gaunt, his eyes carrying the exhaustion of a man fighting battles on multiple fronts. His divorce proceedings were ugly. Vanessa had filed for emergency custody, claiming Ryan was mentally unstable and under my undue influence. It hadn't worked, but the attempt had been vicious. Judge Morrison called the court to order. "Che, this is Whitmore versus Whitmore. Case number CV2024-8847. Mrs. Chen, you may present your opening statement." Margaret stood, and I'd never been more grateful for her calm professionalism. She didn't raise her voice, didn't gesture dramatically, just presented the facts with surgical precision. "Your Honor, This case is about a pattern of financial exploitation, disguised as family love. Eleanor Whitmore transferred property worth nearly $400,000 to her son, with the understanding, the implicit but clear understanding, that she would remain part of her grandchildren's lives and her son's family. For 3 years, she supported this family financially while they lived beyond their means, spending her money on luxuries while she covered their essential expenses. Margaret clicked a remote, and the screen behind her filled with the first exhibit, a side-by-side comparison of Vanessa's Instagram posts showing luxury purchases and my bank statements showing utility payments, the dates matching perfectly. Then, when Eleanor could no longer follow every arbitrary rule, when she became inconvenient rather than useful, Vanessa Whitmore banned her from seeing her grandchildren, called Child Protective Services to falsely report her as a danger to children, and launched a public relations campaign to paint Eleanor as unstable and vindictive. Another click. Vanessa's Instagram post about toxic family members appeared on screen, and I watched Vanessa's face flush. We will prove that this property transfer was made under an implied contract of continued family relationship, that the consideration for this transfer failed when Eleanor was systematically excluded, and that Vanessa Whitmore orchestrated this exclusion while continuing to benefit from Eleanor's generosity. This isn't about a gift gone wrong. This is about financial elder abuse, manipulation, and fraud. Margaret sat down. Judge Morrison's expression gave nothing away, but I saw her make a note on her legal pad. Bradley Morrison stood for his opening statement. His strategy, immediately clear. Paint me as a controlling matriarch who couldn't accept her son's independence. Your Honor, this is a sad case of buyer's remorse. Eleanor Whitmore freely gave her son a house, a generous gift that any parent might make. But when Ryan and his wife made normal parenting decisions, when they set reasonable boundaries about their children's upbringing, Eleanor couldn't accept it. Rather than respecting her son's autonomy, she's using the legal system to punish them for growing up. He gestured to Vanessa, who dabbed at her eyes with a tissue on cue. My client has been vilified in the press and on social media. She's been stalked, harassed, threatened, all because she dared to make parenting decisions that Eleanor disagreed with. Now Eleanor wants to take their home, uproot 2 young children, and destroy this family out of spite. It was a good narrative, I'd give him that. If you didn't know the actual facts, it might even be convincing. Judge Morrison looked unimpressed. Let's proceed with testimony, Mrs. Chen. Call your first witness. The plaintiff calls Eleanor Whitmore. I'd practiced my testimony for weeks, but nothing prepared me for the reality of sitting in that witness box, swearing to tell the truth, and looking out at the faces watching me, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Vanessa's face a mask of false sympathy that barely hid her rage. Margaret walked me through the chronology, methodically. The death of Tom, the decision to transfer the house, the 3 years of financial support, documented in excruciating detail. Mrs. Whitmore, why did you give your son the house? I wanted him to have what Tom and I had built. I wanted my grandchildren to grow up with roots and stability. And I wanted, my voice caught, I wanted to still feel needed by my family after my husband died. Did you discuss any expectations with Ryan about your continued involvement in his family's life? Not explicitly, but it was understood. I'd been watching Emma and Jack 3 times a week for years. I'd been part of their family routines. It never occurred to me I needed to put that in writing. When did your relationship with Vanessa change? It was gradual. Small comments about my cooking being too ethnic, about the way I dressed not being elevated enough for their social circle. But I bit my tongue because I wanted to see my grandchildren. Margaret pulled up a text message on the screen. Is this a message from Vanessa Whitmore to you dated October 29th of last year? I read it, though I'd memorized every word. Yes. She told me I was a toxic influence and that monthly visits would be more manageable. How did that make you feel? Devastated. Confused. I'd spent 3 years following every rule, supporting them financially, sacrificing my own needs, and this was how they repaid me. Why did you decide to pursue legal action? I took a breath. When Vanessa called Child Protective Services to report me as a danger to my own grandchildren, children I'd helped raise, children I loved more than anything, that's when I realized this wasn't about parenting disagreements. This was about control, and I wasn't going to let myself be erased from their lives after everything I'd given. Morrison's cross-examination was predictably aggressive. He tried to paint me as overbearing, as unable to accept boundaries, as financially manipulative myself by holding money over their heads. Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it true that you resented your daughter-in-law from the beginning? No, I welcomed her into our family. But you disapproved of her spending habits. I disapproved of being asked to pay their electric bill while she bought a $2,000 mixer, yes. So you were keeping track of their purchases, monitoring their spending. I was watching my financial support be wasted on luxuries while they claimed they couldn't afford necessities. And when they set boundaries about your access to the grandchildren, you decided to punish them by taking away the house. I met his eyes steadily. Mr. Morrison, I didn't take away anything. I'm asking the court to restore equity that I created, that my late husband created, and that your clients have exploited while systematically excluding me from the family I tried to help. He didn't like that answer. Ryan's testimony was the turning point. When Margaret called him to the stand, I watched Vanessa's face go white. Morrison jumped up immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Ryan Whitmore is a party to this dispute. His testimony is self-serving and should be excluded. Mr. Morrison, Ryan Whitmore is not a party to this lawsuit, Judge Morrison said dryly. The property was transferred to him, making him the legal owner, but the dispute is between his mother and his wife regarding the circumstances of that transfer. I'll allow the testimony. Overruled. Ryan took the stand, his hands visibly shaking. Margaret approached him with unusual gentleness. Mr. Whitmore, you're the defendant in this case, but you're testifying for the plaintiff. Can you explain why? Because my mother is telling the truth, Ryan said, his voice hoarse but clear. And I've spent 3 years helping my wife lie about it. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's expression sharpened with interest. Margaret pulled up the first exhibit, bank statements. Can you explain these transactions? Those are automatic payments my mother set up to cover our mortgage. $2,800 every month for 5 years. She did it because Vanessa convinced me to ask for help, and I was too weak to say no or find another solution. Why did you need this help? Ryan's jaw tightened. We didn't, actually. Not at first. We had the money. But Vanessa wanted to maintain a certain lifestyle, expensive furniture, renovations, luxury purchases. It was easier to let my mother pay the mortgage so we could spend our income on other things. Did your mother know this? No. We told her we were struggling, that we'd lost income, that we needed temporary help. And then the temporary help became 5 years of exploitation. Margaret pulled up the next exhibit. Text messages between Ryan and Vanessa. Can you read this exchange from August 2022? Ryan's face flushed, but he read. Vanessa texted me. We need new living room furniture. Tell your mom we're behind on property taxes and need $8,000. I responded. She already paid for the kitchen renovation. This feels wrong. Vanessa wrote back. She gave us this house. She wants to help. Stop feeling guilty and just ask. Did you ask? Yes, and my mother paid it. And we used the money for furniture that cost $12,000. The testimony continued for 2 hours. Ryan walking through every manipulation, every lie, every instance where Vanessa had coached him on what to say to extract money from me. He presented her journal as evidence, reading entries that made even Judge Morrison's eyebrows rise. Then Margaret asked the question that changed everything. "Mr. Whitmore, when did you realize what was happening was wrong?" Ryan looked directly at me, tears streaming down his face. "When my 7-year-old daughter sent my mother a message begging her to make us sell the house because it makes everyone sad. When I realized we'd turned our home into a prison, built on my mother's generosity and my cowardice, that's when I knew I had to tell the truth, no matter what it cost me." Morrison's cross-examination was vicious. "Mr.
Whitmore, isn't it true you're only testifying against your wife because you're angry about the divorce? I'm testifying because it's the truth."
"I should have testified 3 years ago. You're asking this court to believe you manipulated and exploited your own mother." "Yes, because I did, and I'm ashamed of it." "And now you want us to believe you've suddenly developed a conscience." "I don't care what you believe," Ryan said quietly. "I care that my mother gets justice, and my children learn that actions have consequences, even when those consequences are painful." Morrison sat down, his strategy in ruins. The final witness was unexpected. Cody Jenkins. Margaret had subpoenaed him, and he'd fought it tooth and nail. Now he sat in the witness box, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, his confident businessman persona cracking under Margaret's questioning. "Mr. Jenkins, did you help your daughter plant a negative story about Eleanor Whitmore in the Spokane Review?" I know the editor. I mentioned the situation to him. The situation where a 67-year-old woman abandoned your family at the airport during a blizzard. It was very cold that day." Margaret pulled up weather records. "It was 52 degrees and sunny. You lied to a reporter to damage Eleanor's reputation, didn't you?" "I was protecting my daughter." "By committing defamation?" Margaret placed a document on the screen. The newspaper article with my lawyer's annotations highlighting each false claim. "You told the press Eleanor exhibited erratic behavior and mental instability. Do you have any evidence of that?" "She was acting irrationally. By refusing to be your family's chauffeur after being banned from Christmas dinner." "That's rational, Mr. Jenkins. What's irrational is thinking you can exploit someone financially for years and face no consequences." Cody's face went purple. "We didn't exploit. Your daughter spent $43,000 on luxury items while Eleanor paid their utilities. Your daughter called CPS to falsely report Eleanor as a child abuser. Your daughter kept a journal documenting her manipulation tactics. And you helped her try to destroy Eleanor's reputation in the press. Does that about sum it up?" "Objection." Morrison was on his feet. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained," Judge Morrison said. But she was watching Cody with the expression of someone who'd seen enough. "Mrs. Chen, move on." But the damage was done. Cody Jenkins had admitted to planting the story, had failed to justify it, and had revealed himself as exactly what he was: an enabler of his daughter's cruelty. Closing arguments were almost anticlimactic after the testimony. Morrison tried to salvage his case by painting Vanessa as a victim of family dysfunction. But his heart wasn't in it. He'd seen the evidence, heard Ryan's testimony, watched his own witness implode on the stand. Margaret's closing was simple. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. Eleanor Whitmore gave her son a house worth nearly $400,000 with the understanding she'd remain part of his family. Instead, she was exploited financially, excluded systematically, and vilified publicly. The consideration for this transfer has failed. Justice demands restitution." Judge Morrison took exactly 7 minutes to reach her verdict. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented, heard testimony from multiple witnesses, and examined the documentation provided by both parties. This is one of the clearest cases of financial exploitation, disguised as family generosity, that I've seen in my 20 years on the bench." Vanessa started crying. but Judge Morrison ignored her. Mrs.
Vanessa Whitmore orchestrated a systematic campaign to extract financial support from Eleanor Whitmore while simultaneously working to exclude her from family life. The journal entries alone demonstrate premeditation and malice.
The false CPS report demonstrates a willingness to weaponize government resources, and the media manipulation demonstrates a pattern of character assassination. She looked directly at Vanessa. You have brought shame to the concept of family, Mrs. Whitmore, and this court will not reward that behavior. Judge Morrison read her ruling. The property at 2847 Maple Street will be sold immediately. Eleanor Whitmore will receive 85% of the net proceeds. The remaining 15% will be placed in an irrevocable trust for Emma and Jack Whitmore's college education, with Eleanor Whitmore as trustee. Additionally, Ryan and Vanessa Whitmore will pay Eleanor Whitmore $16,070 in restitution for financial support provided under false pretenses. She continued. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the prosecutor's office for investigation of the false CPS report, which appears to constitute filing a false report with law enforcement. And I'm ordering both Ryan and Vanessa Whitmore to participate in family counseling regarding appropriate grandparent access, with a separate determination to be made in family court regarding visitation rights. The gavel came down. We're adjourned. Vanessa's sobs echoed through the courtroom, but they sounded performative, hollow. Ryan sat in the gallery with his face in his hands. Whether from relief or grief, I couldn't tell. Margaret turned to me, her professional mask cracking into a genuine smile. We won. Eleanor, we won everything. We did, I said, but the victory felt strange. Not triumphant, just finished. As we left the courtroom, I saw Emma and Jack in the hallway with Ryan's divorce attorney, who'd been watching them during the proceedings. They ran to me, and I caught them both, holding them close while reporters snapped photos and strangers watched our reunion. Did you win, Grandma? Emma asked. Yes, sweetheart. I won. Does that mean we can have Tuesday cookies again? I laughed, the sound wet with tears. Yes, Tuesday cookies forever. Epilogue. 6 months later. The house sold for $512,000 in March, a bidding war between 3 families who saw what Tom and I had built. Good bones, great neighborhood, home with history. After agent fees and closing costs, I received $391,800. The $76,800 trust for Emma and Jack would grow with compound interest, enough to pay for state college or significant trade school expenses when they were ready. I bought a small house in the South Hill neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and a kitchen, big enough for Tuesday cookie baking. Emma helped me pick out paint colors. Jack insisted we needed a tire swing, and I hired someone to install one. Ryan and Vanessa's divorce was finalized in April. Ryan got primary custody after Vanessa's behavior during the trial. The journal entries, the false CPS report, the media manipulation, proved a pattern of instability. Vanessa got every other weekend visitation and mandatory anger management counseling. She moved to Seattle with her parents. I heard she's working in social media consulting and dating someone new, already posting pictures of their perfect blended family online. Some people never learn. Ryan rebuilt his life slowly, painfully. He rented a modest house near his school, stopped trying to live beyond his means, started therapy to understand how he'd let himself become complicit in Vanessa's manipulation. We have dinner every Sunday now. Him, me, Emma, and Jack. We don't talk about the trial much. We don't need to. The truth came out, justice was served, and we're rebuilding trust brick by brick. Emma is thriving in 2nd grade. She wrote a story for class called My Grandma the Cookie Warrior that made me cry and laugh simultaneously. Jack started kindergarten and told his teacher that his grandma is the strongest person in the world because she fights for what's right, even when it's scary. Out of the mouths of babes. The women from my support group, Jennifer, Paula, Karen, and 3 others who joined along the way, still meet monthly,
We call ourselves the Resistance, ironically. But we've become real friends, supporting each other through divorces and boundary setting and standing up to toxic family members. We've helped 2 other grandmothers pursue legal action against adult children who exploited them financially. We won both cases. Sometimes at night I sit in my new backyard with a glass of wine and look at the stars. I talk to Tom, like he's sitting beside me. Tell him about Emma's soccer games and Jack's obsession with dinosaurs and Ryan's slow journey back to being the man Tom raised him to be. We did it. I tell Tom's memory. Justice was restored. The kids are safe, and I learned something important, that love without boundaries isn't love, it's doormat behavior. That generosity without reciprocity isn't family, it's exploitation. And that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is fight back. The wind rustles through my new garden, and I imagine it's Tom agreeing. In September, Emma's school invited me to Grandparents' Day. I brought cookies, sugar cookies shaped like stars and hearts, decorated with Emma and Jack in my kitchen the night before. All the other grandparents wanted the recipe, and I shared it freely, because good things should be shared with people who appreciate them. Vanessa wasn't there. Ryan said she'd been invited to attend, but declined, claiming it was too painful to see me playing the perfect grandmother. I didn't contradict her narrative. I just handed out cookies and watched Emma beam with pride as she introduced me to her teacher, her friends, every child in the hallway who would listen. "This is my grandma Eleanor," she said to anyone who'd listen. "She's brave and strong, and she taught me that family means people who show up, not just people who say pretty words." Later, when I was helping in Emma's classroom, her teacher pulled me aside. "Emma talks about you constantly, about how you fought for them, how you taught her that love means protecting people, even when it's hard." "You've had quite an impact on her." "She's had quite an impact on me too," I said, watching Emma through the classroom window as she played with friends, her laughter clear and uncomplicated, no longer carrying the weight of adult warfare. That night I got a text from Ryan. "Thank you for today. Emma won't stop talking about it. She says when she grows up she wants to be brave like Grandma." I responded, "She already is. You both are. It just took some time to remember." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took losing everything to realize what I had." "I love you too," I typed back. "And Ryan, you didn't lose everything. You still have Emma and Jack, you still have me. You just had to lose the things that were destroying you to find the things worth keeping." "When did you get so wise?" I smiled at my phone. "When I stopped being afraid of being alone and started being afraid of being used." Final scene. It's Tuesday afternoon and my kitchen smells like vanilla and butter and the particular magic of sugar cookies baking. Emma and Jack are at my kitchen island, decorating cookies with the focused intensity of artists creating masterpieces. The radio plays oldies that remind me of Tom. The sun streams through my windows, warming the space where we work. And, for the first time in years, maybe since Tom died, I feel completely at peace. "Grandma," Jack says, holding up a cookie covered in so many sprinkles. It's more sprinkle than cookie. "Is this one good enough for Grandpa Tom?" My eyes burn, but I smile. "Your grandpa would say that's the best cookie he's ever seen. Too many sprinkles is exactly the right amount." "That's what I said," Jack beams. Emma looks up from her creation, a heart cookie decorated with careful precision. "Grandma, tell us about when you and Grandpa Tom made cookies." So I do. I tell them about Tuesday afternoons in the house that used to be mine, about their father as a boy with flour on his nose, about Tom's terrible jokes and worse singing and the way he made every ordinary moment feel special, just by being in it. I tell them about love that lasts beyond death, about families you build through choice and commitment, about standing up for what's right even when everyone tells you to be quiet and accept less than you deserve. And while I talk, we make cookies. We make memories. We make a family that's smaller than I planned, different than I expected, but more honest and real than what I had before. Revenge, I learned, isn't about destruction.
Real revenge is building something better from the ruins of what you lost. Real revenge is teaching your grandchildren that they deserve respect and reciprocity, not conditional love based on compliance. Real revenge is standing in your own kitchen, in your own house, with people who chose to be there, and feeling peace instead of resentment. Vanessa got her consequences: public humiliation, loss of her perfect house, a divorce that revealed her character. But I got something better. I got my life back. I got Tuesday afternoons with Emma and Jack. I got a son who finally learned to stand up for what matters. And I got to learn, at 67 years old, that it's never too late to stop being a doormat and start being a warrior. The cookies come out of the oven, golden and perfect. We arrange them on Maria's old serving platter, the one I couldn't bear to look at for years, but now holds the sweetness of new traditions instead of the bitterness of loss. To family, I say, raising my coffee mug in a toast. Emma and Jack raise their milk glasses. To family, they chorus. The real kind, Emma adds seriously. The kind that shows up. The kind that shows up, I repeat, and mean it with every fiber of my being. Outside, the world spins on. Somewhere, Vanessa is probably posting about her perfect new life. Somewhere, other families are fighting battles between love and exploitation, generosity and manipulation, silence and justice. But here, in my kitchen, with my grandchildren's laughter echoing off the walls and cookies cooling on the counter and Tom's memory blessing it all, here, I've won the only battle that ever mattered, the battle to be seen, to be valued, to be loved not for what I could give, but for who I am. And that, I realize as Emma steals a cookie and Jack tries to sneak 3, is the sweetest revenge of all. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to fight for your place in your own family? Let us know. Your story might be next.